Chapter 1396. Ah, fellow Taoist Kai? Xiaohua didn't expect that there would be someone in the air. Hearing that familiar voice, he naturally raised his head. Wuxia descended from the air, looked at the cave behind Xiaohua, then looked at Xiaohua's cultivation. She said thoughtfully, "Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed an almighty person. It's only been a few dozen days, and you've actually already firmly stepped into the early third level of qi refining. It looks like, after a few more days of hard work, I'm afraid, you'll be able to rush into the middle stage." Xiaohua said with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Kai praises me too much. I'm only at the third level of qi refining. Not to mention Senior Li's foundation establishment, I'm still far from fellow Taoist Kai's fifth level of qi refining." How can I compare to Senior Li? Wuxia was dejected. "Oh right, fellow Taoist Kai. Why are you still here?" Xiaohua's eyes turned, and he asked knowingly. Wuxia's face was slightly red, and she frowned. Since fellow Taoist Xiao was able to comprehend something at the moment of life and death on 1,000 Feet Peak, can't you also let I cultivate in seclusion this time? Even if I have limited aptitude and no progress, can't I cultivate in seclusion? After Wuxia finished speaking, she felt that it was inappropriate, as if she was trying to hide something. Her face was crimson, and she stamped her feet, urged her magic power, and leaped into the air, about to fly far away. "Fellow Taoist Kai, take care. Senior Li left something for you." Xiaohua laughed in his heart and hurriedly shouted. Sure enough, Wuxia's figure flew out several dozen feet, then suddenly stopped in the air. She hesitated for a moment, then flew back. At this time, her face had already regained its calm, and there seemed to be some expectation in her eyes. "What is it?" "When did Senior Li give it to me?" Wuxia asked. "A few dozen days ago, after fellow Taoist Kai left." Xiaohua answered and took out the communication talisman. Wuxia frowned slightly, and used her hand to take it. She asked again, "What did Senior Li say?" This Xiaohua hesitated, and said with a smile, "Senior Li said that if we're fated, we can all meet in the utmost happiness faction." Xiaohua didn't know what Li Zongbao meant. Of course, he didn't dare to say anything. He also didn't want to say anything. Li Zongbao didn't say anything, so he could only say what he said. Of course, this was also what Li Zongbao had said. Unfortunately, Xiaohua still didn't understand the heart of a female cultivator. When Wuxia heard this, a cold smile appeared on her face. In that case, fellow Taoist Xiao also has such a communication talisman? Xiaohua was embarrassed and said in a low voice, Yes, Senior Li also bestowed this junior with one." "Ha ha ha," bestowed Wuxia sneered and said, "I naturally bestowed this message talisman." "No, Senior Li didn't say that." Xiaohua was very anxious, his back was sweating. "He didn't say that, but he did." Wuxia's face was covered in frost as she held Li Zongbao's message talisman in her hand. The expression in her eyes changed a few times before finally becoming resolute. She urged the mana in her hand, and a ball of flame rose from her hand. In the blink of an eye, the message talisman was burned to ashes. "Fellow Taoist Kai?" Xiaohua was shocked. He really couldn't understand Wuxia's actions and said anxiously, "What are you doing?" "Not doing anything. Senior Li is a foundation establishment senior of the utmost happiness faction. What does he have to do with us? What's the use of keeping the message talisman?" Wuxia's voice came from afar. Xiaohua was completely speechless. His flying figure also stopped. At this time, it had already been dozens of days since the incident at 1,000 Feet Peak. Wuxia was still cruising around here. Needless to say, she must be worried about Li Zongbao. But her performance in front of Xiaohua, a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. A female cultivator's heart is like the sand at the bottom of the sea. No matter how profound Senior Li's cultivation is, I'm afraid he can't figure it out. Xiaohua shook his head with a bitter smile, and turned to fly towards 1,000 Feet Peak. 1,000 Feet Peak was still the same. It didn't attract the attention of other cultivators because of the death of several hundred rogue cultivators in Tianqi. It also didn't become famous in the country of Xi, because a devil dweller was killed by a foundation establishment cultivator. On the contrary, it was because Li Zongbao advanced to Foundation establishment several dozen days ago, which caused some celestial phenomena, and attracted the attention of some cultivators. They came to investigate, but how could those cultivators see anything? Soon after, they all dispersed. Xiaohua came at this time, so he definitely couldn't meet other cultivators. Looking at the numerous caves on 1,000 Feet Peak, Xiaohua simply couldn't think of going in to explore. Who knows if there are other demons inside? Oh, that's right. The stone statues in the blood-colored space. There are two of them. One is a devil dweller and the other is a devil dweller. Qingfeng means blood shadow, and Luo Jiesen's blood shadow. Are they respectively these two things? But if the two of them are, then the third cultivator to establish heaven forsaken. What is he? Xiaohua suddenly thought. Also, what about Tianqi? Should I bring Qingfengmin's matter to the rogue cultivators in Tianqi? Xiaohua thought of another problem. Tianqi was originally an alliance of rogue cultivators. It was precisely the protection of rogue cultivators. Although the rogue cultivators in Tianqi are somewhat scheming against each other, after all, they are here in name. They can intimidate those sects and cultivator aristocratic families. Moreover, if Tianqi develops and grows stronger, it may not be impossible to contend against those sects and aristocratic families. Although Qingfengmin's purpose in establishing Tianqi is sinister, the results are positive. Many rogue cultivators have benefited from it. If I tell Qingfengmin's matter Tianqi, won't it disband? And won't the rogue cultivators in Tianqi fall into a situation where they have no one to rely on? Alas, forget it. It's already been several dozen days. Maybe Wuxia has already spread the news here. Tianqi has also disbanded long ago. Besides, there's still Li Zongbao. He's a cultivator of Lian Country's Extreme Happiness School. This kind of matter of killing a devil, it's bound to spread. Even if I don't say it, Tianqi would have already disbanded by now. Forget it. Now that I've also obtained a fire tribute cultivation method, I'll be able to cultivate to the 5th level of qi refining. At that time, I'll have magic power and flying speed. Qi refining stage cultivators, who would I be afraid of? As for Tianqi, it has nothing to do with me. Xiaohua thought of Ma Qingqing and the others and couldn't help but feel somewhat dejected. They were all wholeheartedly working for the rogue cultivators, but they had instead fallen into a tragic end. Oh, I forgot. These several dozen days, I've been cultivating cultivation methods. I still haven't carefully looked at the storage bag I got from Qingfengmin's blood shadow. Xiaohua scratched his head. He had obtained so many things for no reason that he didn't even have the time to carefully look through them. Looking through his gains was Xiaohua's favorite thing to do. Inside Qingfengmin's storage bag, there were a lot of things, and they were also a mess. Apart from a few jade bottles, there were some things of unknown origin. The cultivation methods that Xiaohua had high hopes for before were not even a single book. Oh, how could I forget again? Qingfengmin is a devil. Why would he want medicinal pills and cultivation methods? Even if there were cultivation methods, he wouldn't carry them with him. Presumably, he left them in Jingbua City or somewhere else. Xiaohua suddenly realized. But Tianqi has so many cultivation methods. Don't they all have to rely on Qingfengmin to coordinate them? Where would he put the cultivation methods? What a pity. This guy was completely absorbed by my devil spear point, not leaving behind a single trace. If I had known earlier, I would have asked him at that time. But what's the use of regretting now? Xiaohua curled his lips and threw all the things inside the storage bag into the space. Just like before, he placed them in categories. And there are also 2 gold foil here. Xiaohua placed the 2 gold foil together with the 2 gold foil he had obtained before. These 4 gold foil looked exactly the same, and there were some strange patterns on them. But as for what they were used for, he still had no idea. Apart from this gold foil, among the remaining things, Xiaohua only recognized a tiger head waist token, because when he was organizing things, there was also a waist token with a bunch of bamboo drawn on it together with this waist token. Because he wanted to split it equally with Wuxia, Xiaohua kept the tiger head waist token for himself and gave the bamboo one to Wuxia. However, even if he recognized it, Xiaohua still didn't know what it was used for. Of course, this was enough. After all, the remaining things were strange, and he simply couldn't see the original appearance of these things. Forget it, let's look at the jade bottles. Xiaohua took out the jade bottle. As soon as he opened the jade bottle, he was stupefied. Hee, I thought I was drawing water with a bamboo basket for nothing. So the good stuff was actually hidden here. Inside these several jade bottles were all foundation establishment pills. Xiaohua roughly counted and estimated that there were about 30 pills. I'm rich. Xiaohua was very excited. He rubbed his hands and put the foundation establishment pills into his space, sweeping away his somewhat depressed mood. With these foundation establishment pills, presumably when he cultivated to the peak of the 12th level of the Qi refining realm, he should be able to easily step into the foundation establishment realm. That being said, Xiaohua had only just reached the 3rd level of the Qi refining realm. The distance from the 12th level of the Qi refining realm was still very far. Who knew when he would be able to reach the peak of the Qi refining realm? But, with these foundation establishment pills, Kai Wuxia's chances of stepping into the foundation establishment realm are also very high. Xiaohua naturally thought of the storage pouch that was given to Kai Wuxia. Forget it, those foundation establishment pills are already hers. In the future, I don't know if I'll be able to see this eccentric girl again. Why would I think about it? Xiaohua turned his head and looked at the Thousand-Zhang Peak not far away. He leaped up and flew into the distance. However, just after flying for a moment, before he could fly out of the Thousand-Zhang Peak's range, Kai Wuxia intercepted him in midair. Looking at Kai Wuxia, who was flying over from afar, Xiaohua secretly laughed. You still say you don't care about Li Zongbao? I just came over from the Thousand-Zhang Peak, and you're already here to inquire about him? But contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, Kai Wuxia didn't mention Li Zongbao's matter to him at all. Instead, she cupped her hands and asked, Fellow Taoist Xiao, the trip to the Thousand-Zhang Peak was out of my expectations. Not only did I not repay fellow Taoist's kindness, I even almost implicated fellow Taoist. This really makes I blush with shame. I want to find another opportunity to make up for it. I wonder if fellow Taoist is interested? Chapter 1397. Hearing Kai Wuxia's words, Xiaohua's first reaction was to shake his head. Nonsense, he had a 5th-level Qi refining cultivation method, medicinal pills, and the mysterious dragon transformation art to cultivate. For the time being, he didn't need to worry about cultivation methods. Instead of taking risks, he might as well find a place to cultivate. Maybe he could reach the 5th level of Qi refining in a few years. Oh, fellow Xiao doesn't need to be in a hurry to answer. Wait until I finish explaining the whole story, then you can decide. Kai Wuxia seemed to understand Xiaohua's thoughts, and said with a smile. This Xiaohua hesitated, but he quickly cupped his hands and said, Then, I am all ears. Actually, the matter is very simple, Kai Wuxia said with a smile. I wonder if fellow Xiao has heard of the revolving reflection pill. Revolving reflection pill? Xiaohua stared blankly and rolled his eyes. He had only told Li Zongbao and Kai Wuxia about Yunqi Marsh, but he hadn't mentioned the rainbow epiphyllum. So he asked, what kind of medicinal pill is that? Kai Wuxia didn't doubt that Xiaohua didn't know about it. So she explained the effects of the revolving reflection pill, then said, Unfortunately, this revolving reflection pill is only effective for cultivators at the 12th level of Qi refining. Speaking up to here, her eyes flashed with a strange light. Then she restored her calm. It's useless for low-level Qi refining cultivators like me. Fellow Kai, what do you mean by this? Xiaohua was a bit confused. The revolving reflection pill's main ingredient is the rainbow epiphyllum, which fellow Xiao has been to Yunqi Marsh before. However, the rainbow epiphyllum generally appears after the rain. Normally, it is hidden in the marsh and is extremely difficult to find. Moreover, the rainbow epiphyllum is guarded by a spirit butterfly called the water pattern butterfly. If you aren't at least at the 6th or 7th level of Qi refining, I'm afraid it will be difficult to pick. Actually, what I want to talk about is another medicinal pill that is equally famous as the revolving reflection pill. It's called the embryonic breathing pill. Kai Wuxia finally said the main point. Embryonic breathing pill? Xiaohua furrowed his brows. He did obtain some pill recipes and alchemy manuals, but recently, he only focused on cultivating his cultivation technique. He didn't look at the pill recipes and alchemy manuals, so he didn't know what this embryonic breathing pill was. The revolving illumination pill and the embryonic breath pill are spirit pills that can be used by qi condensation cultivators. The revolving illumination pill is used by qi condensation cultivators to help them condense their divine sense. As for the embryonic breath pill, it can be used by all qi condensation cultivators. Its effect is to help a cultivator break through a bottleneck. Of course, this pill is only effective once, and the success rate is 50%. Only 50%. Xiaohua exclaimed. I thought I could break through after taking it. There's no such thing as absolute certainty in this world. Wuxia seemed to have thought of something, and her expression became a little gloomy. She smiled bitterly and said, even if you use pills to increase your cultivation, it's not something that can be done overnight. A pill can only be effective for a certain stage, and the more you use it, the worse the effect. This embryonic breath pill can help a cultivator break through a bottleneck, especially for qi condensation cultivators. Even if the success rate is only 50%, it's still very precious. Then, where is the main ingredient of the embryonic breath pill? Is it also in Yunqi Marsh? Xiaohua's heart slightly moved and he asked, do you know of the Inkzhao Black Forest? Wuxia asked calmly. Inkzhao Black Forest? Xiaohua immediately shook his head like a rattledrum. I've heard that Tianqi has been to this place before, and many people have died there. I's cultivation is shallow, so I definitely won't go there. Hee fellow Xiao, don't worry. I was just asking if you know of the Inkzhao Black Forest, and I didn't say I wanted to go there. Wuxia smiled, looked at the Thousand-Zhang Peak in the distance, and said, the Inkzhao Black Forest is a place that only qi condensation cultivators of the 7th stage and above can go. With my current cultivation, going there will only be suicide. I want to invite fellow Xiao to go to a place similar to the Inkzhao Black Forest, but the degree of danger is much lower. Fellow Kai, please tell me. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Last time I met fellow Xiao, there is a place 1,000 miles to the west called the Sabingmeng mountain range. This mountain range is infested with spirit beasts, and there are countless dangers inside. However, according to what this poor Taoist knows, there is a kind of spirit fruit growing in an extremely secretive forest on the outskirts of the Weiming mountain range. It is called the mother-child spirit fruit, and it is the main ingredient used to concoct the embryonic breathing pill. Fellow Kai, do you mean to invite I to go to the Sabingmeng mountain range with you? Xiaohua said thoughtfully. Fellow Xiao, what I said is exactly what I was thinking. Wuxia nodded and said, fellow Xiao's flying speed is very fast, and you also have strength and magical power that I don't have. If I don't invite fellow Xiao, who else can I invite? Xiaohua frowned and pondered. Fellow Xiao, think about it carefully. There are 12 layers of qi refining, and every layer has a bottleneck. If you have this embryonic breath pill, you have a 50% chance of breaking through this bottleneck. This kind of opportunity can only be encountered by chance. I just found a clue from the things that fellow Xiao gave I reckon that some loose cultivator got it from Tianqi. I can't guarantee that other loose cultivators don't know about it. After pondering for a moment, Xiaohua still shook his head, cupped his hands and said, fellow Kai, please know that I's cultivation is not enough. I really don't dare to take the risk. Fellow Kai, please find someone else. Wuxia sighed and said, alas, other than fellow Taoist Xiao, who else can this poor Taoist feel at ease? Xiaohua secretly criticized, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only smile bitterly and said, I really don't want to go. Even if fellow Taoist picks the mother-child spirit fruit, how will you refine the embryonic breath pill? Fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't need to worry about this. If fellow Taoist Xiao wants to go, just the two of us won't be enough. I still need to invite someone else. Wuxia patiently explained. There's still someone else? Xiaohua shook his head even more. Right now he had cultivation methods, medicinal pills and alchemy techniques. He needed to cultivate calmly and didn't want to take the risk. How about this, fellow Taoist Xiao? Give one of your messaging talismans to I. I need some time to find someone. When the time comes, I will send a message to you. If you change your mind, you can come find me. Wuxia didn't force him and suggested. And that's for the best. Xiao Hua gave one of his messaging talismans to Wuxia. Right, fellow Taoist Xiao, are you still going to cultivate in seclusion here? Wuxia looked around and asked. Of course not here. Xiao Hua shook his head and said. This place is too close to Thousandjiang Peak. I don't feel at ease. I want to return to Jingbua City, find an inn to stay in, and slowly cultivate. Uft. Wuxia laughed out loud and said. Fellow Taoist Zhao's idea is very fresh. Let's not talk about the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the inns in Jingbua City. Even if you have to pay people spirit stones every day, it's not advisable. Then, fellow Taoist Kai, do you have any good suggestions? Xiao Hua scratched his head and said. Is there even a need to say it? Find a place with abundant heaven and earth spiritual qi and build your own cave? If you want to live there for a long time, then make it a bit more tidy. If you want to cultivate for a short time, then make it a bit simpler. Oh, there's a rare spirit-seeking mouse that's a specialty of the Sobbing Meng mountain range. It's the most sensitive to heaven and earth spiritual qi. If fellow Taoist Xiao can obtain one, then you can easily find a place with abundant heaven and earth spiritual qi in the boundless mountains and open up your cave. I don't dare to think so much. Xiao Hua waved his hand, looked into the distance and said with a smile. I only need a cave to settle down in. Wuxia turned her head to look, then pointed with her finger and said, 200 miles south from here, there's a tall mountain that's similar to the Thousandjiang Peak. I passed by when I came to the Thousandjiang Peak some time ago. There's an abandoned cave there. It should be a certain senior who doesn't use it. If fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't mind, then you can go take a look. When I find people, I'll go look for you. And that's fine. I'll do as fellow Taoist Kai says. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and thanked her. After Wuxia cupped her hands and said goodbye, Xiao Hua also flew south. Sure enough, he saw a tall mountain about 200 miles away. That abandoned cave was actually hidden. Xiao Hua searched for a long time before he saw the entrance that was only half a person's height, and was blocked by a mountain tree. After he entered, he discovered that there was indeed another cave inside. This abandoned cave was quite large. Inside, there were several caves that were connected. Each cave had been cleaned and looked very decent. Among these caves, except for one that had a shabby praying mat, which Xiao Hua knew was the place for closed-door cultivation, there was also a cave that had wild weeds and a few common spirit herbs, which was where medicinal herbs were planted. As for the other caves, he didn't know what they were used for. No wonder it's called a cave. Sure enough, it's different from ordinary caves. Xiao Hua looked at the caves again and secretly nodded his head. Then, just like before, he used a boulder to block the entrance and exit of the cave. He sat cross-legged on the praying mat and began his closed-door cultivation. What Xiao Hua was currently cultivating was the fire attribute cultivation method, raising fire to burning the heavens. This was a basic cultivation method. When cultivating this cultivation method, Xiao Hua's mind was still in the space. On one hand, he was comprehending the heavenly Tao. On the other hand, he was drawing spiritual qi into his body. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth circulated in the meridians of the third level of qi, refining his true qi and strengthening his cultivation. In addition to this, Xiao Hua also wanted to cultivate the dragon transformation art. The cultivation of the dragon transformation art was different from the cultivation of basic cultivation methods. The dragon transformation art borrowed the cultivation technique of blood shadow art and cultivated it in Xiao Hua's meridians. In truth, it was the cultivation of the meridians themselves. What made Xiao Hua ecstatic was that although the blood shadow art was an extremely sinister cultivation method of the devil realm, it was also extremely wonderful and had its own unique effect. Xiao Hua only needed to activate the dragon transformation art, and the meridians in his body really began to cultivate automatically, as if they had a life of their own. He didn't need to worry too much about it. Moreover, cultivating the dragon transformation art in his meridians didn't have any conflict with refining his true qi in his meridians. Thus, Xiaohua settled down in this abandoned immortal's cave. As time passed day by day, Xiaohua's cultivation speed finally caught up with ordinary cultivators. His cultivation also increased little by little. Chapter 1398. Time passed extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, Xiaohua had been in seclusion for more than half a year in this abandoned cave. In this half-year, Xiaohua cultivated day and night. In addition to the basic cultivation methods, the dragon transformation art, and so on, he also cultivated some of the basic magic techniques. He even read a lot of the book he obtained from the Zhu family. It could be said that he had a direct impression of the Dawn Rain continent. As for Xiaohua's cultivation, in this half-year he had steadily advanced from the early third level of qi refining to the middle third level of qi refining. Although this kind of advancement was very common for ordinary cultivators with sex, for Xiaohua, it was an enormous breakthrough. However, after reaching the middle third level of qi refining, Xiaohua had no choice but to come out of seclusion. The reason was very simple. The medicinal pills in his space were gone. Since Xiaohua began his seclusion, because he had a fire attribute cultivation method suitable for his cultivation progress seemed to be faster than before. Therefore, when he cultivated, the medicinal pills he took weren't as extravagant as before. He only took one out when necessary. However, his medicinal pills were still limited. In half a year's time, the marrow cleansing pills and clear ripple pills in his space were all consumed by him. There were only a few dozen foundation establishment pills left. After stopping taking medicinal pills, Xiaohua felt that his cultivation had begun to progress at a tortoise's speed. Xiaohua, who had already adapted to taking medicinal pills and cultivating at the same speed as ordinary cultivators, was somewhat dissatisfied. Speaking of medicinal pills, he could still refine them. Xiaohua had the alchemy technique, the alchemy furnace, and the spiritual herbs in his space. Refining medicinal pills shouldn't be a problem, right? And this was what Xiaohua had planned to do half a year ago. However, when he truly began to refine medicinal pills, he discovered that he had a huge omission, and that was the earth fire used to refine medicinal pills. Refining ordinary medicinal pills, such as the parasol pill, blood replenishing pill, and so on, didn't require earth fire. It was possible to use some fire talismans to refine them successfully. However, marrow cleansing pill, clear ripple pill, and other medicinal pills that could increase one's cultivation needed earth fire. Moreover, the alchemy furnace that Xiaohua obtained was so big. The saltpeter and 3 yang talismans that Xiaohua purchased weren't enough to warm the alchemy furnace, let alone refine medicinal pills. Of course, after Xiaohua discovered this problem, he was extremely depressed, but at the same time he didn't stop studying alchemy, as well as understanding this alchemical furnace. Fortunately, he was able to find the method to refine this alchemy furnace on the inner wall of the alchemy furnace. Moreover, he also knew the name of this alchemy furnace and the general method to use it. This cauldron was called the 3-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern cauldron. The little bird on top of the cauldron looked like a vermilion bird, and the 5 openings around the cauldron were arranged according to the 5 elements. This 3-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace could refine high-level pills, but the prerequisite was that the furnace had to be refined first. Otherwise, it could only refine low-level pills. As for this low-level pill, it wasn't the low-level pill that Xiaohua had in mind. Although the introduction didn't go into detail, it did mention a high-level pill, the nascent soul pill, that was used by nascent soul stage cultivators. Then what was this low-level pill? Was there still a need to explain? This discovery also made Xiaohua's extremely depressed mood slightly better. After all, he had obtained a high-level item. Yes, although his cultivation was still very shallow now, and his spiritual power was a little bit short of the requirement to refine this alchemy furnace, the alchemy furnace was in his own space. Even if he didn't refine it, he couldn't refine pills. Others couldn't even see it, so it couldn't be said to be snatched by others. In addition to the basic cultivation method, the dragon transformation art that Xiaohua practiced seemed to have some progress. Why did he say it seemed? Because the dragon transformation art was used by the meridians to transform into dragons. Xiaohua hadn't found the key to it yet. He only felt that the dragon transformation art could be used, and there were no abnormalities in his meridians. As for where the progress of half a year of cultivation was, Xiaohua didn't know. Perhaps it was because the time was too short. Xiaohua stood up and walked away. Looking at the very tidy cave, he smiled and said to himself, "This cave is really not bad. I wonder which senior left it behind. Of course, it would be best if he left behind a cultivation method, or something like that." However, according to what Wuxia said, this cave, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, isn't very abundant. It's also not an excellent place for cultivation. My cultivation speed is like a tortoise. I'm afraid it has something to do with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It seems, if I really want to find a place to cultivate for a long time, I should find a place with abundant spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Yes, in addition, it's best if there's earth fire. Soon after, Xiaohua pushed away the boulder blocking the cave, and walked under the sunlight. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes to enjoy the warmth of the sunlight for a while. Xiaohua then opened his eyes and looked at the clear blue sky. He secretly said, "It's already been more than half a year. This Wuxia, why hasn't she sent me a message talisman? Could it be that she has already given up? Or the other person hasn't been found? Yes, who is that person?" Listening to what she said, it should be related to alchemy. Thinking that it was related to alchemy, Xiaohua's heart suddenly stirred. If I can go with them, maybe I can get some information from that cultivator. Even if it's some information about earth fires, it would also be good, right? Previously, when Wuxia invited Xiaohua, he didn't want to go no matter what and only wanted to build a cart behind closed doors. Now they didn't come looking for him, but he was thinking about it himself. However, it was already half a year later, and Wuxia still hadn't sent a message. If there were no accidents, she must have already gone. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and sighed slightly. After basking in the sun for a while, he also returned to the cave. The problem of medicinal pills must be solved. Clear breeze pills are suitable for third-layer qi refining cultivators. I must go to the exchange market and exchange for some. Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the shabby praying mat and pondered. However, there really aren't many medicinal pills that can increase cultivation. I can only get them by bidding in the exchange market. Others can see the effect with just 1 or 2 pills, but I have to use dozens of pills. The exchange market is not a good place to go. I still have to think more about alchemy. Xiaohua himself also knew that being able to buy a large amount of marrow cleansing pills and clear breeze pills from the Feng clan's exchange market was a lucky thing. He couldn't always come across them, so he could only place his hopes on alchemy. In the space behind his head, there were actually many spiritual plants. At this time, they were all several hundred years old, and some were even close to 1,000 years old. However, even if he had these spiritual plants, he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to exchange them for a suitable amount of medicinal pills. Moreover, if these scarce spiritual plants attracted disaster, wouldn't it be even more unprofitable? I forgot. The spiritual plants in my space are all very old. If I need to exchange them for spirit stones or do some other things, it really won't be easy to take them out. I still have to plan ahead. Xiaohua previously only wanted to use these spiritual plants for alchemy. He simply didn't think about exchanging them. Therefore, the spiritual plants in his space grew without being picked. Now that he thought about it, it was still somewhat inappropriate. Therefore, after thinking for a while, he picked some of each spiritual plant. After a period of time, he would pick some more. This way, he would have spiritual plants of all ages, and it would be convenient to exchange them. What is this thing? When Xiaohua was sorting out and picking the spiritual plants, he naturally had to look at the rainbow cloud that had already been transplanted into the space. That ugly rainbow cloud was no longer as weak and small as before. It seemed to be overflowing with vitality. Moreover, the rainbow on top of the sphere had also become a lot bigger. The most peculiar thing was that the surface of the rainbow cloud was gradually revealing some strange runes. Those runes were faintly discernible and weren't particularly clear. As for what surprised Xiaohua, he discovered that on the stem of the rainbow cloud, there were actually 2 thumb-sized insect eggs. Where did these insect eggs come from? Xiaohua frowned as he tried to recall, but very quickly, Xiaohua understood that this egg must have been brought in with him when he transplanted the rainbow epiphyllum from Yunxi Marsh. Moreover, it must have been laid by the water pattern butterfly that had attacked him. No wonder when I walked so close the water pattern butterfly didn't attack. It seems that it was laying eggs. Moreover, when I took away the rainbow cloud, the water pattern butterfly's crazy attack was also for these insect eggs. I was careless and actually caused its home to be destroyed. Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh and cry. Forget it. Even if I go to Yunxi Marsh now, where will I find the mother of these 2 insect eggs? I can only treat them well and raise them as butterflies. Xiaohua secretly comforted himself. But at this moment he suddenly thought of something and was dumbstruck for a moment. Of course, it was precisely this question that lit up his mind like lightning. My space, how can I put living things in it? Xiaohua was completely dizzy. At this moment he also remembered that when he put the Ice Worm King's egg into the space in Nankaiping, he already faintly felt that something was wrong. This was because although the Ice Worm King's egg was damaged, it still had vitality and couldn't be casually placed in a storage bag. It was just that the situation that day was urgent, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that he thought about it, how did the space in his mind become a storage bag? But then, Xiaohua didn't understand. The storage bag was specially used to store spirit beasts, such as Fei Qing from the spirit husbandry sect. Anything that wasn't a spirit beast couldn't be placed in it. In other words, things that could be placed in the storage bag couldn't be placed in the storage bag, and things that could be placed in the storage bag couldn't be placed in the storage bag. But, why did this rule change when it came to me? Xiaohua was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses. For a moment he didn't know what to say. Indeed, he didn't have much to think about. He didn't know the origin of this space at the back of his mind at all, so all kinds of strange things were normal. Another few days passed, and Xiaohua's cultivation still didn't make much progress. He had no choice but to leave the cave abode again, and prepare to make a trip to Jinghua City's East City to try his luck, and see if he could exchange for a clear breeze pill. Just as he flew into the air, there was a change in his mind. Didn't Wuxia leave me a message talisman? She didn't come to find me, so why can't I go find her? As he thought, he took out the summoning talisman, and urged it with his transcendence energy. The summoning talisman flew into the air. However, the summoning talisman didn't fly too far. It only flew a few li to Xiaohua's left before stopping. Chapter 1399. In less time than it took to eat a meal, Wuxia flew over. Seeing Xiaohua's flabbergasted expression, Wuxia giggled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, could it be that you're the only one allowed to advance to the middle stage of the 3rd layer of the aura refining realm? But I can't also enter closed-door cultivation?" Xiaohua looked at Wuxia's peak 5th layer of the aura refining realm and said with a bitter smile, "I cough. I only thought fellow Taoist had already gone to the Sobbing Mountain range. I simply didn't expect fellow Taoist to be nearby. Could it be that fellow Taoist already picked some mother-child spirit fruit? What does fellow Taoist Xiao think?" Wuxia didn't answer and instead asked a question. This Xiaohua slightly frowned, but he immediately smiled and said, "If fellow Taoist Kai went to the Sobbing Mountain range, presumably you would have greeted I. Since I didn't receive any message from fellow Taoist Kai, presumably you still haven't gone to the Sobbing Mountain range, right?" Wuxia clapped her hands and said, "Worthy of being the fellow Taoist I think highly of. Fellow Taoist Xiao, fellow Taoist actually believes in I so much, this really makes I gratified." How could Xiaohua think so much? It was just that he saw Wuxia's cultivation increase, and inside his jade bottle was a foundation-building pill. He reckoned Wuxia's jade bottle was about the same, so he casually asked. Just as Xiaohua smiled and wanted to say something, he suddenly froze and said involuntarily, "Fellow Taoist Kai, could it be you took a foundation-building pill?" Hearing this, Wuxia slightly sighed. She neither nodded nor shook her head. She only raised her eyes to look at the clouds in the distance. After a long while she said, "I wanted to take it, but I know my cultivation level is too low. The medicinal power of this foundation-building pill, is far from what a fifth layer of the aura refining realm can bear. Oh, Xiaohua nodded, but Kai Zhuoxiao immediately said, I can only take 20% of a foundation building pill. 20%? Xiaohua said involuntarily. Fellow Taoist Kai still took it in the end. What will happen when you build your foundation in the future? Foundation? Kai Zhuoxiao said self-mockingly. Fellow Taoist Xiao. How confident you are that you can cultivate I to build foundation. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. This cultivation level was truly far away, so how could he know? 10%. Kai Zhuoxiao raised a finger and said without hesitation. My Kai family's cultivation method only goes up to the 10th layer of qi refining. I have only cultivated up to the 5th layer, and I have been stuck at the 5th layer for many years. If I can't break through in a few more years, then I will only be able to cultivate up to the 8th layer of qi refining. Furthermore, even if I were to reach the 10th layer of qi refining, I would still be unable to reach the 12th layer of qi refining by relying solely on the techniques of the Kai clan. Foundation establishment is nothing but a pipe dream. Rather than that, I might as well use the foundation establishment pill to increase my cultivation. Kai Zhuoxia said in disappointment. I believe that fellow Taoist Xiao also understands I's urgency to obtain the embryonic breathing pill, right? Xiaohua was speechless and could only nod slightly. Compared to Kai Zhuoxia, he was even more pitiful. Up until now, he only had a low-level cultivation method that could allow him to cultivate up to the 5th layer of qi refining. If Kai Zhuoxia only had a 10% chance of reaching foundation establishment, then he himself didn't even have a 5% chance. No matter what, ever since I met fellow Taoist Xiao, I's good luck has been unceasing. Not only did I obtain the keepsake of Old Man Thousandjiang, I also escaped death on Thousandjiang Peak, and obtained some foundation establishment pills. Presumably, with fellow Taoist Zhao's company, that mother-child spirit fruit will also be easy to obtain. In the future, when I reach foundation establishment, I will also have a lot more confidence, Kai Zhuoxia said with a smile. With fellow Taoist Kai's auspicious words, I also hope that everything will go smoothly and I will reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said with a smile. Alright, since fellow Taoist Xiao has come out of seclusion, then, let's go to Sabingmeng Mountains together according to what we agreed on half a year ago? Kai Zhuoxia stared with her big eyes, looking forward to Xiaohua's answer. I will listen to fellow Taoist Kai's arrangement. Kai Zhuoxia was overjoyed and said with a smile, with fellow Taoist Zhao's help, this alphabet spirit fruit will certainly be easy to obtain. Immediately, under Kai Zhuoxia's lead, the two of them flew towards the northwest. On the way, Xiaohua very casually asked about the other person that Kai Zhuoxia wanted to invite. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, that person wasn't an alchemist like Xiaohua had imagined. Instead, he was the same as Kai Zhuoxia, a disciple of a cultivator family. His name was Yanliwei. Seeing Xiaohua's very strange expression, Kai Zhuoxia finally told him the reason. As it turned out, although this Yanliwei's cultivation was only at the 7th layer of the qi refining realm, he was the nephew of a foundation establishment alchemist from Xuanyan school. Kai Zhuoxia wanted to use Yanliwei's relationship to ask that alchemist from Xuanyan school to refine embryonic breathing pills for her. So that's how it is. After he understood, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He didn't think that nepotism was so important in the cultivation world. It seemed that his idea of learning alchemy was going to fall through. After several days of continuous travel, they arrived at a place with beautiful mountains and limpid waters. A large village appeared in front of the two of them. This is the Yin clan. Kai Zhuoxia pointed at the continuous village and said, this is where the clansmen of the Yin clan who don't cultivate live. Their disciples who truly cultivate are all in the valley behind the village. It's said that the valley has a formation set up by a gold core senior. Ordinary people can't casually enter. After flying close to the village, Kai Zhuoxia landed on the ground. There were already several young people who looked very capable coming up to greet her. Seeing that Kai Zhuoxia was a female cultivator, a girl around 20 years old stepped out from the crowd and said in a soft and clear voice, I am Yen Feng. Greetings to the female immortal. May I know why the female immortal has come to visit my Yin clan? Kai Wuxia nodded slightly and said, I am a disciple of Luyang's Kai clan. Previously, I sent a letter to your honorable senior martial brother Yen Liwei. Now I've come as promised. Oh, so you're looking for martial uncle Yen. The girl Yen Feng looked at Kai Wuxia several times and then looked at Xiaohua. She smiled and said, Martial uncle Kai, please follow disciple to the village and wait for a moment. Disciple will immediately send someone to invite martial uncle Yen. Thank you for your trouble. Kai Wuxia nodded slightly, and then saw the two young disciples quickly walk into the village. Yen Feng accompanied Kai Wuxia as they slowly walked forward. When they arrived at the small pavilion in front of the village, Yen Feng took out some spirit fruits for Kai Wuxia and Xiaohua to enjoy. She and the other disciples accompanied them. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a slightly frivolous voice sounded. "Io, fellow Taoist Kai, I received your message and have been thinking about you day and night. I've always been looking forward to your arrival. Who would have thought that you would delay for half a year?" Xiaohua didn't turn around and frown slightly. He thought to himself, this guy, is he a cultivator? But when he looked at Kai Wuxia, he didn't see anything strange on her face. Presumably, she didn't find this strange. He stood up from his chair and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Yen, I had some mundane matters to attend to and was delayed. Sorry for making you wait." Xiaohua also stood up and turned around to look. It was a cultivator dressed like a young master. He was holding something that looked like a folding fan in his hand, and was swaying as he walked over. This cultivator's eyebrows were raised, his pair of peach blossom eyes were slightly narrowed, and his nose was tall. He looked very handsome. This fellow Taoist is? Yanli didn't return the greeting. His left hand lightly waved the folding fan, and his peach blossom eyes looked at Xiaohua strangely as he asked Kai Wuxia. "Hehe, fellow Taoist Yen, this is fellow Taoist Xiaohua. I invited him to help." Kai Wuxia didn't reveal Xiaohua's background and vaguely said, "Help? With his cultivation?" Yanli curled his lips and said without any trace of politeness, "My Yen clan has plenty of disciples like him. If you want to help, I can grab a bunch of them. Why would I need him?" "Hehe, fellow Taoist Kai, are you not at ease with I?" Kai Wuxia quickly waved her hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Yen is a disciple of a famous clan. How can I not believe you? It's just that I owe fellow Taoist Xiao a favor. I have no choice but to invite him. Consider it as returning the favor." "Greetings, fellow Taoist Yen." Xiaohua understood and cupped his hands in greeting. "Fellow Taoist?" Yanli snorted from his nose and sat next to the two. He said, "You're only at the 3rd level of qi refining. If you were in my Yen clan, you should call me martial uncle. Even if you're outside my Yen clan, you should still call me senior." Fellow Taoist Yen Kai Wuxia was afraid Xiaohua would get angry, so she quickly smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, our friendship is shallow. I hope fellow Taoist Yen can forgive me for calling you fellow Taoist." "Hehe, that's fellow Taoist Kai's friendship with him. What does it have to do with I?" Yanli picked up a spiritual fruit from the stone table and put it in his mouth. He said noncommittally. Kai Wuxia smiled bitterly and gave Xiaohua a meaningful look. It seemed she didn't want to make things difficult for Xiaohua. Xiaohua sneered in his heart. He was very clear in his heart. If Li Zongbao from the Utmost Happiness faction saw this situation, wouldn't he have already beaten this guy black and blue? "I'm just asking for some embryonic breathing pill. There's no need to give Yanli any face." Just as Xiaohua frowned and was about to speak, Yanli opened his mouth again. He flipped his folding fan and pretended to be magnanimous. Forget it, forget it. I am also a disciple of a cultivation family. How can I lower myself to the same level as you, a little rogue cultivator?" Kai Wuxia didn't explain Xiaohua's background, but Yen Liwei seemed to understand. Then he said to Kai Wuxia, "Half a year ago, fellow Taoist Kai told this poor Taoist about this matter. This poor Taoist has already considered it. If we go together, fellow Taoist Kai will have to give this poor Taoist 70% of the pills." "What? 70%? Kai Wuxia didn't wait for Yen Liwei to finish speaking and said in surprise, "Didn't I say 50%? At that time, didn't fellow Taoist Yan also not object? Yan Liwei seemed to have already expected Kai Zhuoxia's surprise. He didn't panic at all. He lightly waved his folding fan and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Kai, think about it. You just told me the whereabouts of that thing, and I still have to accompany you. I also have to take the risk to pick it. After picking it, I still have to beg the elders of my sect to refine it. From beginning to end, fellow Taoist Kai is only leading the way. I still have to take care of fellow Taoist's safety. You say, 50%, is it appropriate? Of course, if fellow Taoist Kai is willing to dual cultivate with I, then I naturally won't bicker with fellow Taoists so much. Dual cultivate." Xiaohua was very happy. He thought of the dual cultivation technique in his space, and also thought of Li Zongbao's furious appearance. Chapter 1400. Kai Zhuoxia's face was slightly red, but she wasn't angry at all. She looked at Xiaohua helplessly, then turned around and said with a smile, "I originally wanted to give 20% to fellow Taoist Xiao, but fellow Taoist Yan's method of distribution. How can I deal with myself? Haha, isn't this good? Fellow Taoist Kai and I are of one mind. Isn't this 30% exactly what fellow Taoist Kai wants?" Yan Liwei laughed and pointed his fan at Xiaohua. "This guy is a burden. Why are you bringing him along? Even if you want to return his favor, you can just give him 1 or 2 pills later. Besides, with his cultivation, there's no reason to waste pills." Xiaohua's expression changed and Kai Zhuoxia hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Yan, you can say that, but isn't fellow Taoist Yan taking a bit too much? I put in the most effort, so I naturally take more. If fellow Taoist Kai isn't willing, we can go our separate ways," Yan Liwei said without hesitation, as if he knew Kai Zhuoxia wouldn't leave in a huff. Sure enough, Kai Zhuoxia clenched her teeth, pondered for a moment, and said to Xiaohua with a bitter smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, it seems I can't fulfill what I promised you before. If fellow Taoist thinks it's not worth it, it's not too late to withdraw now." Kai Zhuoxia didn't tell Xiaohua about the split before, but the information about the mother-child spirit fruit was obtained from the things Xiaohua gave her. Since she didn't say anything, it should be the two of them splitting it equally. Now, Kai Zhuoxia was willing to split it equally with him. It was only about 10% of the dan, but it was still far from what he thought before. But Xiaohua looked at Kai Zhuoxia's appearance, then looked at Yan Liwei, and his heart was clear. Kai Zhuoxia pulled him first to return his favor, second, to pull him in as a helper. What she had to resist was precisely this Yan Liwei. If he withdrew, Kai Zhuoxia would be in an absolute disadvantage. But if she didn't find Yan Liwei, how could she find an alchemist who could refine pills? Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "I's cultivation is shallow. I'm afraid 1 or 2 pills will be enough. If fellow Taoist Kai doesn't mind, I'm still willing to take a trip." Kai Zhuoxia's face was filled with joy, and her eyes were filled with gratitude. She smiled and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao, for helping me." "Help?" Li Yanwei sneered. "I am the one helping." Forget it. It's between the two of you. It has nothing to do with I." Yan Liwei stood up and said, "If fellow Taoist Kai doesn't object to I's suggestion, let's make a vow." "All right, I'll listen to fellow Taoist Yan's arrangements." Kai Zhuoxia nodded deeply. Thus, the two of them clapped their hands and made an oath. Shortly after, they said sternly, "Fellow Taoist Kai, please wait for a moment. I's things will follow you immediately." Yan Wei left for the time it took to finish a meal, before he returned with a storage pouch hanging from his waist. He smiled and said, "Let's go, fellow Taoist Kai. Let's go quickly and return quickly. My martial uncle Yan might come to the Yan clan in a month or so. If we can take advantage of that time to find him, I'm afraid we have a 70% chance of success." Kai Zhuoxia beamed with joy and said with a smile, "That's great. That place, we should be able to return within a month or so." Return within a month or so. Yan Liwei's eyes turned a few times before he smiled and said, "I'll have to ask fellow Taoist Kai to lead the way." Soon after, the three of them flew into the air. Kai Zhuoxia accompanied Yan Liwei and led the way. Xiaohua silently followed behind them, secretly putting some distance between them. Ha! This Xiaohua actually has some real skills. A third-layer aura refining cultivator can actually catch up with a fifth-layer aura refining cultivator. Yan Liwei was originally disdainful of Xiaohua, but when he saw that Xiaohua's flying speed wasn't slow, he couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Although he wanted to test it out, Wuxia didn't fly fast at all. Yan Liwei pondered for a moment, and eventually gave up. After flying like this for several days, Xiaohua faintly felt that something was wrong because the direction they were flying in seemed to be different from the direction Wuxia told Xiaohua. Although Xiaohua couldn't distinguish the specific direction, he had a general idea. Sure enough, after another day, when Wuxia suddenly changed direction and flew in another direction, Yan Liwei's expression slightly changed. He asked with extreme displeasure, "Fellow Taoist Kai, what do you mean by this? Could it be that you don't trust one?" "Of course not. In this country of Xi, if I can't even trust fellow Taoist Yan, who else can?" Wuxia said with a smile. "However, this trip is really important to I, so I have no choice but to be a bit more cautious." "TSK, isn't it just embryonic breathing pills? My martial uncle Yan has plenty of them. Who would be greedy for your few?" Yan Liwei said disdainfully. Wuxia smiled but didn't say anything. The three of them flew for an entire day. When the sky gradually darkened, they found a cave where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was slightly denser. Each of them took a cave and prepared to adjust their breathing and rest. Yan Liwei was different from the previous few days. He patted his storage pouch and took out several yellow talismans from within. Urging his transcendence energy, the yellow talismans all turned into green and lustrous balls of light and sank into various parts of the cave. Then he made a few more at the entrance of the cave. Finally, he took a slightly larger yellow talisman and steadily entered the cave. Looking at Yan Liwei's somewhat strange behavior, Xiaohua asked in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Kai, this fellow Taoist Yan, what is he doing?" It seems to be similar to a warning talisman. And fellow Taoist Xiao is right. This is a special formation talisman. Its function is extremely different from a warning talisman. The warning talisman only serves as a warning, but this formation talisman is used to set up a formation. Looking at fellow Taoist Yan's appearance, it seems that he has set up formation talismans all around the cave. The cave is enveloped by his formation talismans, and no external objects can enter. Strange, why didn't he take it out a few days ago? Xiaohua was somewhat baffled. Wuxia slightly shook her head. I don't know. Maybe it's because we're about to reach the Sobbing Mountain range." Xiaohua disagreed, but he also couldn't think of any other reason. Thus he returned to the nearby cave. Xiaohua was very simple. He directly used several large rocks to block the entrance of the cave. Xiaohua practiced a series of basic cultivation techniques and spells. He also practiced that indescribable incantation for a while. Xiaohua had been practicing this indescribable incantation for more than half a year. He himself couldn't tell what specific effects it had. He only felt that his ears and eyes were somewhat clear, and his spirit was extremely good. If it was another cultivator, wouldn't they have already given up? Xiaohua didn't have too many cultivation techniques to practice. Since he felt that it was useful, he persevered and practiced it. Just as Xiaohua was reciting the incantation, he suddenly entered a very strange state. It was as if his eyes and ears could leave his body. He could perceive everything inside and outside the cave. Of course, this kind of perception was vague and couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Divine sense? Xiaohua's heart stirred. His first reaction was that he had divine sense. However, he immediately shook his head inwardly. That divine sense should be able to see things outside the cave. I can only sense things, but I can't clearly see them. It's still far from the legendary divine sense. At this moment, there was an extremely slight movement outside the cave. Xiaohua immediately sensed it. Thus, Xiaohua stood up and walked to the cave entrance. He looked outside through a crack in the mountain rock. It was already night. The moon didn't show its head. The entire outside was pitch black. But in the pitch-black distance, he could faintly see a figure slowly flying away. This isn't this Yin Shenwei? Why is he going out? Xiaohua thought and wanted to push the mountain rock away. But when his palm touched the mountain rock, he changed his mind. He brushed his hand and took out an earth escape talisman from the space. He slapped it on his body and urged his magic power. A familiar feeling appeared again. His body sank into the ground. Following the direction of Yan Xinwei's vital energy, Xiaohua hit on the ground and slowly searched. Yan Xinwei quietly flew in the air until he was about 1 mile away. Then he stopped. He looked left and right and didn't find anything unusual. He walked to a big tree and stretched out his hand. After drawing a strange mark on the big tree, he took out a yellow talisman. He opened his mouth and said a few words on the yellow talisman. Then he placed the yellow talisman in a small hole in the tree. Then he looked left and right again and quietly flew back. After he disappeared for the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua's figure slowly rose from the ground. Xiaohua looked at the direction Yan Xinwei disappeared, and then looked at the place where Yan Xinwei was standing. He smiled bitterly in his heart. This guy, what is he trying to do? No matter if it's the mother-child spirit fruit or the embryonic breathing pill. He has 70% of them. Is there a need for him to do anything? The night was extremely dark, and Xiaohua was underground, so he didn't see what Yan Ganwei was doing. Xiaohua looked around the big tree, and then wandered around for a while, but didn't find any clues. He couldn't help but wonder. This guy, what is he doing here? Maybe if I wait here, I can find something? Xiaohua thought. He hid his body well, and waited to see who would come here. However, after waiting for almost a night, he didn't see anyone coming. Xiaohua looked at the bright sky in the east, and then went back into the cave. Although he didn't find anything, how could Yan Xinwei suddenly come out from the cave in the middle of the night for no reason? If something is unusual, it must be a demon. When the three of them moved, Xiaohua wanted to find a chance to explain to Wuxia. However, Yan Xinwei and Wuxia were flying in front of him. Xiaohua didn't have a chance to explain. In the next few days, Yan Xinwei didn't go out at night. Instead, he was very quiet. Yan Xinwei didn't have any unusual behavior. Xiaohua didn't want to tell Wuxia anymore. He couldn't figure out what was Yan Xinwei's purpose. Or maybe, this guy just got up to relieve himself? However, just when Xiaohua was hesitating, something happened again. Similarly, Wuxia also changed her direction. Yan Xinwei's face was like frost. Only this time, Yan Xinwei didn't say anything. He just looked coldly and was extremely silent. Wuxia originally wanted to explain, but looking at Yan Xinwei's expression, she didn't want to explain. However, at night, Xiaohua stared at the cave where Yan Xinwei was resting for a long time and didn't see him come out. Chapter 1401. Maybe. I've really wronged him. As Xiaohua thought about this, he sat down cross-legged and calmly cultivated the nameless chant. However, when he entered a meditative state, all the movements in his surroundings were reflected in his mind. He suddenly discovered that there seemed to be some fluctuations of spiritual energy about 10 feet in front of his cave. Those fluctuations gradually moved further and further away. This guy. Xiaohua opened his eyes. He also realized that he had an earth escape talisman. Yan Yanwei naturally had one too. He was definitely escaping far away. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then came out of the cave. He walked in front of Wuxia's cave and called out softly, "Fellow Taoist Kai." After a moment, he heard Wuxia reply from inside, "Fellow Taoist Xiao? Do you need something?" Looking at Wuxia's appearance, her expression was somewhat gloomy and her eyes were slightly red. She didn't look like she was cultivating at all. Xiaohua was stunned, but then he acted as if he hadn't seen anything. He said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Kai, fellow Taoist Yan isn't in the cave. If he isn't, then he isn't. What does that have to do with anything?" Wuxia thought Xiaohua would say something important, but when she heard this, her face became slightly unhappy. "It's like this, fellow Taoist Kai. Last time when you changed directions, fellow Taoist Yan went out and happened to be seen by I. However, I followed him and didn't see anything, so I didn't tell fellow Taoist. Now that fellow Taoist just changed directions, fellow Taoist Yan actually went out again. I feel that there's definitely something fishy going on." Is that so? Hearing Xiaohua say that he saw Yin Yinwei go out twice in a row, and both times happened after she changed directions, Wuxia couldn't help but become vigilant. But then she said doubtfully, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I was also cultivating in the cave. How could I not notice? Moreover, fellow Taoist Yen is inside the talisman. If he went out." Wuxia didn't suspect Xiaohua, but she didn't understand how he knew. Xiaohua said with a smile, "The first time was when I casually looked outside the cave during a break in cultivation, and discovered fellow Taoist Yan's whereabouts. Just now, of course, I paid special attention." Then he pointed at the cave and said, "If fellow Taoist Kai doesn't believe me, why don't you go over and shout?" And Wuxia trusted Xiaohua very much. She walked to the front of the cave where Yan Liwei was and called out a few times, but there wasn't any sound from inside the cave. "Ah, thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao." Wuxia sighed and shook her head slightly. "I don't understand. He has already taken 70% of the mother-child spirit fruit. What else does he want? I don't understand this either, but he definitely had a premeditated plan. Fellow Taoist Kai, it's better for you to make plans early." Xiaohua saw that his goal had been achieved, so he cupped his hands in salute and turned around to leave. "By the way, fellow Taoist Xiao, I remember that the first time I changed directions, there was no moon on that night, right? It was such a dark night, but fellow Taoist was actually able to see clearly?" Wuxia suddenly asked. This Xiaohua stared blankly. Soon after, he said, "It's normal for cultivators to be able to see with their eyes, right? Yin Yanwei is a 7th layer qi refining cultivator. How can he walk like a normal person?" Wuxia pursed her lips and laughed. "Besides, the full moon is overhead today. He shouldn't fly out of the cave, right?" Just as Xiaohua was about to speak, his expression suddenly changed, and he flew back into his cave. Upon seeing this, Wuxia knew that Yin Yanwei had returned. She didn't ask any more questions and hurriedly flew back into the cave. After returning to the cave, Wuxia didn't do anything. She only focused her attention on the outside of the cave, wanting to see Yin Yanwei's movements. But after listening for the time it took to eat a meal, the outside was quiet without the slightest sound. This Xiaohua is Shang Huoming's disciple who hasn't entered the sect yet? In the end, Wuxia sighed and rubbed her eyes that had long since become dry from crying. She forced herself to calm down and cultivate. At daybreak the next day, Wuxia saw Yin Yanwei and smiled as usual. "Fellow Taoist Yen, did you rest well last night?" Because he was used to asking about it every day, Yin Yanwei didn't have the slightest doubt. He shook his head and said, "Last night, I worked hard in the cave for an entire night. My cultivation didn't advance an inch. To be honest, if it wasn't for this, I might not have been able to come to fellow Taoist Kai's matter regarding the mother-child spirit fruit. And that's good. I also encountered the same bottleneck as fellow Taoist. I hope that this time, the search for the spirit fruit will go smoothly." Wuxia nodded. In the next few days, Wuxia didn't change her direction, and Yin Yanwei also didn't have any abnormal behavior. Xiaohua also paid more attention to the nameless mnemonic chant while cultivating. On this day, he saw a vast expanse of green in his field of vision. That green was like a green cloud, accumulating in the distance, making people feel a kind of earth-shattering freshness from the bottom of their hearts. Sobbing Ming Mountains? Yin Yanwei saw and couldn't help but be stunned. He turned his head and asked, "Is the mother-child spirit fruit here?" Wuxia smiled and said, "It is here." "It can't be. My family's senior came to Sobbing Ming Mountains many times before and never saw the mother-child spirit fruit. Moreover, Xuanyan School also has disciples who are training here, and I've never heard them mention it." Yin Yanwei didn't believe it too much. "If anyone can know about it, then wouldn't this information be worthless?" Wuxia said mysteriously. "And then please lead the way, fellow Taoist Kai." Xiaohua saw that Wuxia still led Yin Yanwei to Sobbing Ming Mountains and wasn't surprised. He didn't believe that Wuxia, knowing that there was a problem with Yin Yanwei, would still give him the mother-child spirit fruit. As expected, the three of them flew for more than half a day. When night fell, they arrived at a hidden mountain stream. The mountain stream gurgled and flowed out from a crack in the mountain wall. The surroundings of the stream were lush and verdant. Countless thriving weeds, brambles, and shrubs grew. In addition, there were also many vines growing out from the mountain wall. They flew through the air and hung on the thick trees in the surroundings. This place Yan Yanwei saw that Wuxia found a hidden place and was originally somewhat happy. But looking at the surrounding situation, this wasn't a place where the spirit fruit grew? Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment, Wuxia said to Yan Yanwei with a smile. She turned and walked in front of a stone wall. Just as Wuxia turned around, she inadvertently glanced at Xiaohua from the corner of her eyes. Xiaohua also blinked his eyes, indicating that he understood. He also inadvertently crossed his hands behind his head with a relaxed appearance. Wuxia faced the stone wall and held her breath for a moment. She formed a seal in her hand and urged her magic power to hit the stone wall. In the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, Wuxia didn't know how many seals she had hit on the stone wall. But that stone wall didn't have any reaction at all. Seeing Wuxia's performance so hard, Xiaohua laughed until his belly split open. But Yan Yanwei, who was at the side, frowned tightly. When Wuxia's forehead was covered in sweat and she retreated, Yan Yanwei quickly stepped forward and asked, "Fellow Taoist Kai, what's going on?" Cough cough, fellow Taoist Yan. I also don't know what's going on. It's obviously here, but that seal, it doesn't work. Wuxia panted slightly and smiled apologetically. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. The place is right, and the seal is also right. I can't open it for no reason. Wait for I to rest for a while, then I'll try again. Yan Yanwei's face changed slightly, but he endured it and nodded. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Kai. Wuxia rested for a moment, then stepped forward again and hit the blank stone wall with a series of seals. But the result was naturally to no avail. When Wuxia turned around dejectedly, Yan Yanwei's face was gloomy and uncertain. Fellow Taoist Yan, I am really sorry. I really didn't expect that the information was actually fake. I've made fellow Taoist Yan come here in vain. Yan Yanwei stared into Wuxia's eyes, and Wuxia still didn't fear him. After a long while, Yan Yanwei sneered and said, Since it's like this, can fellow Taoist Kai show me the jade slip or book that recorded this information? Perhaps we can find the real place by brainstorming together. I can't agree to fellow Taoist Yan's request. Wuxia's face changed slightly, and she smiled apologetically. I've already looked at this thing no less than 10 times. The place and the seal are absolutely correct. Fellow Taoist Yan, please believe in I believe in you, but I don't believe in this place. Yan Yanwei suddenly became angry. He slapped his hand and took out a fireball talisman. Wuxia and Xiaohua were greatly alarmed. They both retreated half a step, but their hands weren't slow either. They wanted to take out a yellow talisman. But Yan Yanwei's fireball didn't fly towards them, but directly hit the stone wall. With a loud boom, a large hole the size of a bowl was actually blasted into the blank stone wall. But that was merely a large hole created by the explosion. There was nothing else strange about the stone wall. It really is the magic power of a 7th layer Qi refining cultivator. This mid-grade fireball talisman was actually used by him to such an extent. Xiaohua thought, somewhat flabbergasted. Hehe, how is it, fellow Taoist Kai? The place you chose is still wrong. Why don't you take it out, and let I examine it together with you? Yan Yanwei said coldly. How could Wuxia be willing? She resolutely shook her head. Fellow Taoist Yan, perhaps I have comprehended it incorrectly. However, I still hope that fellow Taoist can give me a few more days. Once I find the correct place, I will immediately inform fellow Taoist. Ha ha ha, Yan Yanwei faced the sky and laughed, saying, You stinky girl, your face looks like a village girl. No matter how you look at it, you don't look like a female cultivator at all. You make I lose my appetite. Wuxia's complexion greatly changed. Just as she was about to speak, Xiaohua rushed to Wuxia's side, pulled her sleeve, and said in a low voice, Let's go, there's a 5th layer Qi refining cultivator flying towards us from behind. Right now, Wuxia didn't have the time to investigate how Xiaohua sensed a cultivator flying towards them from behind. She herself didn't know anything. She hurriedly urged her magic power, and her figure flew up, wanting to escape into the sky. Yin Yanwei had already noticed. Seeing Xiaohua fly up, he shook his hand, and a fire net talisman appeared, covering the two of them from top to bottom. Right at this moment, two rough and obscene voices simultaneously sounded. Fellow Taoist Yan, were those two adulterous men and women executed? He looked left and right, but other than a few unlicensed taxi drivers, there was no one else. Third Tanhua very decisively dialed 999. But before 999 arrived, the woman started to wobble again. Third Tanhua advised her to sit on the ground and rest while waiting for the ambulance, but the woman's face was blank. Moreover, she continued to walk crookedly towards the entrance of the district. Most importantly, one of the woman's handbags was thrown on the ground. She simply didn't know about it. Third Tanhua wanted the unlicensed taxi driver next to him to help look after the handbag, but the driver waved his hand and didn't say a word. Third Tanhua was helpless. He could only carry the handbag and chase after the woman. Fortunately, just as the woman left the district, she sat on the ground again, and the ambulance arrived. Third Tanhua hurriedly placed the handbag next to the woman and told the ambulance what happened. He even asked the district security guard next to him to call 110, and he left. Third Tanhua's heart still had lingering fear. He didn't know if the woman's handbag had a problem, and if she would blame it on him. Chapter 1402. The Blue Twin Bears? This obscene voice was extremely familiar. Xiaohua recognized it immediately. Not to mention Wuxia. Wuxia's face was already slightly pale, as if she was very afraid of the Blue Twin Bears. Quickly leave. Xiaohua was also greatly alarmed. He only thought that Yin Ganwei had a backup plan, but he didn't expect it to be an old enemy. That day, he tricked the two of them, causing them to flee with their faces covered in dirt. When they realized what had happened, didn't they still want to grind his bones and scatter his ashes? Now that he saw it, how could he not know that the two of them had already colluded with Yin Ganwei? They wanted to take Wuxia's life, and he was a pitiful fish in the pond. However, Xiaohua knew that the Blue Twin Bears hated him even more than Wuxia. Yin Ganwei's fire net talisman was indeed fast. With a shake of his hand, it covered the top of Xiaohua and Wuxia's heads, and in the blink of an eye, it fell a foot above their heads. But the scene before his eyes was absolutely out of Yin Liwei's expectations. Xiaohua was like an arrow that left the bow, his figure flashing rapidly. His hand pulled Wuxia's sleeve, and in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, he actually narrowly avoided the fire net talisman. Don't think of leaving. Yin Ganwei saw this and was more surprised than angry. Although he had heard the Blue Twin Bears say that Xiaohua's flying speed was fast, in his eyes, Xiaohua was only a little thing in the first layer of the qi refining realm. Although he was now at the third layer of the qi refining realm, he was only a toy in his hands. It was impossible for him to be his opponent. He only needed to let go of his strength and not let him get close to him, and he could easily deal with him. Who would have thought that Xiaohua would actually escape from his plot? How could he not have the intention to kill him? Yin Ganwei shouted loudly, the magic power in his body surging, fiercely urging the flying talisman, quickly chasing after Xiaohua. At the same time he waved his hand, took out the ice thorn talisman from his storage bag, and stabbed it towards Wuxia's back. The Blue Twin Bears also didn't hesitate, similarly waving their hands, and several yellow talismans shot out. Their target was Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't care about them. His figure flew, his speed comparable to the peak of the qi refining realm. In the blink of an eye, he flew a distance of 10 feet. However, at this moment, something embarrassing happened. With a tearing sound, Wuxia's sleeve was actually torn off from her Taoist robe by Xiaohua's great strength. Ah! Beneath Wuxia's great shame, she was even more alarmed. Just now, she had already aroused all of her body's magic force, and used it all on the flight talisman. That speed was something she had never achieved in her entire life, but even so, she was still far inferior to Xiaohua. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua's speed had ripped off her sleeve. Kai Wuxia's complexion was slightly dark, but the skin on her arms and forearms was sparkling and translucent like jade. For a moment, they were all exposed. Sorry. In this moment of delay, Yan Liwei's icicle talisman and the twin blue bear's fireball talismans all hit within a foot of Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't have time to think carefully and grabbed Kai Wuxia's wrist. A huge force was transmitted, and Kai Wuxia's figure immediately floated up like a cloud behind Xiaohua. Flying far away, you think you can leave? Behind them, Yan Liwei saw that the icicle talisman had missed, and he also mobilized his true qi and aroused his flight talisman to chase after them. Although Xiaohua's flying speed was extremely fast, he didn't know what was going on, but although Kai Wuxia was also using all of her magic force and using her fastest speed to chase after him, there was a resistance blocking Xiaohua's arm, restricting his flying speed. As a result, Xiaohua's flying speed was only around the 9th level of qi refinement, unable to increase. Ha ha ha, Yan Liwei sneered. Under the urging of the flight talisman, his speed was already comparable to the 9th level of qi refinement. The distance that Xiaohua had suddenly pulled apart a moment ago was unceasingly shrinking. Looking at the twin blue bears again, although their cultivation was at the 6th level of qi refinement, at this moment, they were still insufficient. They spared no effort to fly behind the three people, and the distance between them grew larger and larger. What's going on? Xiaohua stared blankly, and then became very anxious. He had killed a 6th level qi refinement cultivator before, but he had never fought a 7th level qi refinement cultivator before. Although he saw that Yan Liwei's magic force was formidable, he had some confidence in protecting himself, but with Kai Wuxia, he was definitely not a match. No wonder. There's a flight dual talisman. At this moment, Xiaohua was very regretful that he didn't buy a flight dual talisman. Little thief, hand over your life. Yan Liwei chased a bit closer, and a yellow talisman shot out. A flying sword condensed, and directly stabbed towards Xiaohua's back. Fellow Taoist Xiao, let go of I. Kai Wuxia was very anxious, and exerted all of her strength to pull her arm back. Just as Kai Wuxia struggled free of her arm, Xiaohua's mind lit up, and he shouted, Fellow Taoist Kai, withdraw your magic force. Don't use your true qi in the slightest. Kai Wuxia didn't understand, but at this moment, she obeyed Xiaohua, and immediately dispersed her magic force, no longer urging the flight talisman. A miracle appeared. Just as Kai Wuxia's magic force dispersed, the force blocking Xiaohua's arm suddenly disappeared. How heavy was Kai Wuxia? In Xiaohua's hand, she was about the same as a kitten. With just a slight pull of his hand, she was pulled to his side, and Xiaohua's figure suddenly accelerated, like a shooting star. Not only did he dodge Yan Liwei's flying sword, he even flew far away, disappearing into the clouds in the blink of an eye. Yan Liwei saw that the situation was hopeless, and he also made a prompt decision, stopping his figure. His face was filled with inconceivable shock, and he looked at Xiaohua's flying little black dot from afar, not knowing what he was thinking. Soon the twin bear's pylon also caught up. Looking at the void in midair, the two of them looked at each other, and whispered, Fellow Taoist Yan, this guy's flying speed has become a lot faster, compared to that day when we met. What's the origin of this guy? Yan Liwei waved his hand, stopping the two of them from continuing to speak. We've asked around, but no one knows this guy's name. If it weren't for fellow Taoist Yan's message, the two of us wouldn't have known that this guy is called Xiaohua. The twin bears pylon shook their heads. I heard Kai Wuxia say that this Xiaohua is a loose cultivator, but his cultivation is only at the 3rd layer of qi refining, but his flying speed is comparable to the 10th layer of qi refining. How could he be a loose cultivator? That's right, fellow Taoist Yan. When the two of us met last year, Xiaohua was only at the 1st layer of qi refining. And, in a year, advancing from the 1st layer of qi refining to the 3rd layer of qi refining isn't rare, so it doesn't count as anything. If he's a loose cultivator, then there's a problem. Yan Liwei pinched his chin and sneered. After returning from the sobbing Ming Mountains, put in more effort. Since you know this guy's name, you must drag him out. You must know, if he can escape from our hands today, he can kill us tomorrow. If we don't take advantage of his shallow cultivation to strike first and gain the upper hand, I'm afraid there won't be a good ending in the future. Yes, I understand. Pylon and the twin bears bowed and saluted. Soon after, they said embarrassedly, the two of us aren't talented, so we don't know how we exposed ourselves, causing fellow Taoist Yen to be unable to do as you wish. Hee, it has nothing to do with you. The two of them were extremely cautious and changed directions twice. I'm afraid that when I went out to send a message, I gave myself away. Yen Liwei smiled and waved his hand. However, even so they still left behind a flaw. Fellow Taoist Yen, please speak. Pylon and the twin bears were stunned and asked. The sobbing Meng Mountains are extremely vast, so how could they find an extremely hidden place in such a hurry? In order to not arouse Ai's suspicion, Wuxia presumably followed her previous plan and led Ai to the real place, then pretended that she couldn't find the place and coaxed Ai to leave. Only in the real place would I feel normal. So as long as we carefully search the place just now, we'll definitely find some clues. Pylon and the twin bears felt that it was inconceivable, but after thinking about it carefully, it really was very possible. Even if it's not, what's the harm in us looking around again? Yen Liwei smiled and returned to the stone wall first. Sure enough, at the foot of a mountain in the distance, Wuxia had already changed into a Taoist robe. The blush on her face hadn't faded, and she said in a low voice, I also had no choice. If it wasn't the real place, how could we deceive Yen Liwei? I only hoped that he wanted to take the mother-child spirit fruit for himself, and let us go when he didn't find a single one. Who would have thought? No matter. Xiaohua smiled and said, isn't it better for us to keep our lives than anything else? But the Kai family of Luyang is far inferior to the Yen family. I'm afraid that this offense will put my Kai family in a difficult situation. Wuxia smiled bitterly. If we're afraid of this, how can we still cultivate? Xiaohua sneered and muttered in his heart. Why don't you take out the name of Li Zongbao and the name of the Utmost Happiness faction? I'm sure even the Xuanyan school wouldn't dare to say this. Why should we be afraid of the small Yen family? Also, the place where the mother-child spirit fruit grows, the restrictive spell doesn't seem to be very powerful. Although the place is hidden, if they can guess, I'm afraid the mother-child spirit fruit won't be safe, Wuxia said again. Yu Xiaohua was a little angry. Since he knew that Yen Liwei had bad intentions, why did he still go to the place where the mother-child spirit fruit grows? He could have just found another place. However, when he thought about Wuxia's misgivings about not wanting to provoke the Yen family, Xiaohua felt a sense of powerlessness. Suddenly, Xiaohua's eyes lit up, and a fierce look flashed across his eyes. Although the fierce look disappeared in a flash, it was seen clearly by Wuxia. A chill rose from the bottom of Wuxia's heart. Fellow Kai, please wait for a moment. I'll go back and take a look. If they leave, I'll come back to greet you, Xiaohua said with a smile. Yes, I'll listen to fellow Zhao's arrangements. Wuxia's heart trembled. She didn't dare to ask Xiaohua's true meaning and hurriedly agreed. Then she said in a low voice, fellow Xiao, be careful. Don't worry, fellow Kai, I'll only watch from afar. When they leave, I'll turn back. Xiaohua cupped his hands and flew towards the stone wall again. Looking at Xiaohua's figure gradually flying away, Wuxia stared for a long time. She really didn't expect that a cultivator at the first level of qi refining would have such a great change in his cultivation in a mere year's time. A cultivator at the third level of qi refining actually dared to go back and face a cultivator at the 7th level of qi refining and 2 cultivators at the 5th level of qi refining. Chapter 1403. Yen Liwei and the Pylon twin bears flew to the stone wall. They first looked around for a long time. Then their gazes fell on the stone stream that flowed out of the stream. They saw that the stone stream was very thin. The stream flowed from top to bottom, filling the gaps between the stones, and gurgling unceasingly. Here, Yen Liwei laughed heartily. The water in this stone stream is too deliberate. Presumably, some cultivator used magic power to move the stones here to block the passage. Of course, No wonder there weren't any spiritual power fluctuations. The pylon twin bears echoed. Let I see what's going on. As Yen Liwei spoke, he slapped his hand and took out a palm-sized object from his storage bag. This object was oval in shape, and there was a thumb-sized hole in the middle. Yen Liwei took that object, and took out a yellow talisman in his other hand. Under the urging of magic power, the yellow talisman flashed with an orange brilliance. Soon after, Yen Liwei stuck the yellow talisman onto the palm-sized object. The yellow talisman's brilliance sank into the object. Soon after, the hole in the middle of the object flashed with a milky white brilliance, and then it disappeared. Then Yen Liwei held the object in front of his eyes. A strange thing happened. Through the hole, Yen Liwei could actually clearly see what was behind the stone wall. Oh, this is a big stone. Look, here is the original gap. Someone used magic power to seal it. It looks like a complete stone wall. Yen Liwei squinted one eye, looking as he spoke. At this time, there was suddenly a slight ringing sound. Huh? The pylon twin bears jumped in fright. Looking up, they saw a small bell tied to Yen Liwei's waist. Ah, there's an enemy? Yen Liwei was also shocked. He absolutely didn't expect Xiaohua to suddenly turn around. Moreover, he was already within 10 feet of him. But where was the enemy? Yen Liwei was vigilant, and hurriedly added several defensive yellow talismans to his body. Which fellow Taoist is here? I am Su Yan's Yin clan disciple. Fellow Taoist, please show yourself. Yen Liwei said loudly. But after a long time, no one appeared, and the small bell on Yen Liwei's waist was still ringing. Underground, Pylon and the twin bears were shocked. They suddenly realized something and looked down. Yen Yenwei also came to his senses. Holding the yellow talisman in his hand, he raised the object with the hole in front of his eyes and looked down. Through the hole, everything about 3 feet underground was presented before his eyes. Under Yen Ganwei's careful inspection, he found that about 3 feet below his feet, a ball of yellow light was covering a human figure. Just as Yen Ganwei lowered his head to check, the human figure in the brilliance seemed to have sensed Yen Ganwei's detection. It suddenly stood up and rushed towards another direction on the ground. Earth escape talisman? Yen Liwei sneered. You want to run? No way. As he spoke, he raised his hand. Under the urging of magic power, various yellow talismans rained down. As long as the human figure rushed out from the ground, it was bound to be hit by the yellow talismans. Yen Liwei's mouth revealed a trace of a sinister smile, as if he could already see the miserable state of this person being hit by the yellow talismans. Who knew? That person seemed to have a divine sense. He was actually able to perceive Yen Liwei's yellow talismans. Just as he rushed out from the ground, he suddenly rushed towards Yen Liwei's feet. That speed was faster than an arrow. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to Yen Liwei's feet. Courting death. Yen Liwei was furious. He slapped his hand, and was just about to take out the yellow talismans from his storage bag. At this time, the human figure rushed out from the ground. The thin figure was holding a pitch-black spear in his hand. Xiaohua. The 2 Pai Blue Bears weren't far away, so they naturally saw clearly. They scratched their heads, but they didn't expect that Xiaohua would actually dare to come back. Moreover, he was even hiding under their feet. Yen Liwei shook his hand, and his magic power was about to urge the yellow talismans. It was also at this time that Xiaohua's spear pierced the crook of Yen Liwei's leg. A tremendous force transmitted. Without waiting for Yen Liwei to scream, a burst of brilliance flashed. Yen Liwei's defensive yellow talismans had already been pierced through by Xiaohua's devil spear. Audacious. Yen Liwei was worthy of being a 7th-level Qi condensation cultivator. His defensive yellow talismans were broken, and the black Qi of the devil spear pierced through. However, his magic power still urged the yellow talismans in his hand. Several icicle talismans followed Yen Liwei's hand and stabbed down. Bang bang bang. Several consecutive sounds rang out. The iron cloak talismans on Xiaohua's body were quickly broken, and the remaining icicles pierced his shoulder with extreme ease. Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He didn't even have time to look at Yen Liwei's injury. His figure didn't even change. Maintaining his previous posture, he retreated at extreme speed. Xiaohua's speed was extremely fast. In an instant he retreated 10 meters away. Yu Yanliwei pointed at Xiaohua in astonishment. His hand didn't stop, and he took out some medicinal pills from his storage pouch and placed them in his mouth. Unfortunately, before the medicinal pills in his mouth could melt, a black qi pervaded his face. Yanliwei's finger that was pointing at Xiaohua also gradually stiffened. His figure fell to the ground with a bang, and he no longer made a sound. Ah! Upon seeing this, the twin Pi Blue Bears felt as if they were dreaming. This was a 7th level qi condensation cultivator. His cultivation was far stronger than theirs. Now, he was actually killed by a 3rd level qi condensation cultivator. Although it was a sneak attack, and there was no lack of trickery involved, Yanliwei died at Xiaohua's hands after all. Run! This thought emerged in the minds of the twin Pi Blue Bears at the same time. What was laughable was that, as 5th level qi condensation cultivators, the twin Pi Blue Bears had encountered Xiaohua twice. Both times, they had ended their confrontation with Xiaohua by running away. The first time, the twin Pi Blue Bears had escaped, but what about this time? The twin Pi Blue Bears had long since reached a tacit understanding in their hearts. One of them fled into the Sobbing Meng Mountain Range, and the other fled out of the Sobbing Meng Mountain Range. As for the injured Xiaohua, he didn't care about his injuries at this time. He stood up and directly chased after the twin Pi Blue Bears who were fleeing out of the Sobbing Meng Mountain Range. The hearts of the twin Pi Blue Bears who were fleeing out of the mountain range trembled with fear. They threw out their yellow talismans with all their might, only wanting to prevent Xiaohua from getting close to them. They wanted to prevent Xiaohua from using force to break through their magic. Who would have thought that when Xiaohua saw the yellow talismans flying over, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. He similarly waved his hand, and several fireball talismans were activated by his transcendence energy. Like hailstones, they pelted down on the twin Pi Blue Bears and sealed off their surroundings. Rumble, 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 rumble. Xiaohua wasn't stingy with the yellow talismans in his hand, and he threw out several handfuls in succession. Ah! A blood-curdling scream was heard from the explosion of the fireball. Soon after, a charred corpse fell from midair, falling straight to the ground. One of the twin Pi Blue Bears, a 5th level qi refining cultivator, was actually burned to death by the fireball talismans that Xiaohua refined himself. Seeing the twin Pi Blue Bears' corpses fall, Xiaohua still didn't dare to be at ease. He lowered his body and flew past the twin Pi Blue Bears' corpses. The tip of the devil's spear in his hand still pierced the corpses' backs. Only then did he fly far away, chasing after the twin Pi Blue Bears who were flying into the Sobbing Meng Mountain Range. The twin Pi Blue Bears were 5th level qi refining cultivators, which was the middle level of the qi refining realm. Compared to Xiaohua, who was a low-level cultivator at the middle level of the 3rd level, their cultivation was much higher. Although Xiaohua's cultivation progress was very slow, the transcendence energy in his body far surpassed those of the same level. He wasn't much different from the twin Pi Blue Bears who were in the middle level of the qi refining realm. If the twin Pi Blue Bears worked together, they might have had a chance. At the very least, they wouldn't have been defeated like this. However, the twin Pi Blue Bears had long suspected that Xiaohua was concealing his cultivation level, and planted a seed of fear in their hearts. Secondly, when they saw the 7th level qi refining cultivator, Yanwei, was actually killed by Xiaohua, how could they dare to block his attack? The first thought in their minds was run. After Xiaohua killed one of the twin Pi Blue Bears, he immediately flew high again, chasing after them in the direction of the Sobbing Meng Mountain Range. While Xiaohua was burning the other one, the other twin Pi Blue Bears was already about to escape into an emerald green thicket. If he fell, this Sobbing Meng Mountain Range was so big and Xiaohua didn't have a divine sense, he would probably escape. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and urged his transcendence energy. He completely ignored the several wounds on his shoulder that were caused by the icicle talisman, and chased after them with extreme speed. However, the distance between Xiaohua and the twin Pi Blue Bears was still a bit far. He was still a bit slow. Just when he was still several tens of feet away from the twin Pi Blue Bears, the twin Pi Blue Bears turned their heads and saw Xiaohua chasing after them. They no longer flew forward and plunged into the thicket in the mountain range. When Xiaohua flew to the same place where they fell, there was only a thick layer of fallen leaves, decaying and damp. Where was the shadow of the twin pie blue bears? Xiaohua was unwilling to give up. He sat cross-legged and silently circulated the nameless mnemonic chant, wanting to use that inexplicable perception. However, the movements of several tens of feet around him were all reflected in his heart in a hazy manner, but they were all very normal. How could he find any trace of the twin pie blue bears? After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Xiaohua stood up. He secretly sighed and flew up from his original position. He actually didn't care about the twin pie blue bears. Currently, it wasn't difficult for him to kill this kind of trash. What he was worried about was that the twin pie blue bears would send the news of him killing Yanwei to the Yan clan, or even Xuanyan school. Regardless of whether it was Xuanyan school or the Yan clan, Xiaohua didn't want to provoke them. Forget it. How could a cultivator be afraid of these grudges? Since I can't kill them, then I'll just let nature take its course. Xiaohua directly flew out of the Weiming mountain range. However, just as he flew out several tens of feet, he suddenly heard a bird's cry behind him. Although this sound wasn't as breathtaking as the bird's cry he heard on the southern plains that day, it still caused his magic power to slightly stagnate, and his body to stop for a moment. When Xiaohua turned his head in shock, he saw a goshawk spreading its wings and flying out from the lush greenery of the Weiming mountain range. And in front of the goshawk were precisely the twin pie blue bears. Ha! How did this ruffian provoke the goshawk? Xiaohua was greatly surprised. However, he was also delighted in his heart. He prepared to intercept the twin pie blue bears. Those twin pie blue bears were also strange. They rushed out from the forest and didn't evade when they saw Xiaohua. Instead, they directly rushed over. Strange. Could it be Xiaohua secretly cried out in surprise? He had a bad feeling in his heart. Chapter 1404. Seeing that one of the pylon bears didn't escape to other places, but instead chose to fly in his direction, Xiaohua felt that something was wrong. However, before he could turn around and fly away, a bloody scene occurred. That goshawk's figure was rather large. Its two wings were about 3 meters wide. Although the pylon bears were flying fast, that goshawk was actually much faster than them. With a flap of its wings, it flew to the top of the pylon bears' heads. It was very strange. When the goshawk stretched out its sharp claws that flashed with cold light and grabbed downwards, it didn't grab at the heads that were closest to the goshawk's claws, but instead directly grabbed at the backs of the pylon bears. The pylon bears' faces had long lost color. Feeling the swift and fierce wind on their backs, they immediately changed direction and accelerated their flight. The goshawk's claws missed. It opened its beak and screeched angrily again. Following this screech, the pylon bears' bodies slightly stagnated. In the blink of an eye, that goshawk's two sharp claws grabbed at the same time. The defensive yellow talismans on the pylon bears' bodies were like paper. Without even flashing brilliance, they were immediately torn apart. Immediately after, the goshawk's sharp claws deeply pierced into the backs of the pylon bears. With a miserable cry, the pylon bears' bodies were actually torn in half by the goshawk. The internal organs and some flesh of the pylon bears immediately scattered in midair. However, immediately after, they were blown by the strong mountain wind and scattered in all directions. However, something strange happened. Just as the pylon bears were torn apart by the goshawk, an earthy yellow shadow flew out from the backs of the pylon bears and directly landed on a tree on the ground. The goshawk also immediately threw away the remains of the pylon bears in its claws. With a flap of its wings, it chased after that earthy yellow shadow. That shadow was very small, almost invisible from far away. If not for Xiaohua's sharp eyes and ears, he probably wouldn't have seen it. It was also because of this that Xiaohua was scared out of his wits. Because that earthy yellow shadow was very obvious on the emerald green ground. Its speed was also very fast. In the blink of an eye, it had dashed several meters. That direction was precisely where Xiaohua was standing. Xiaohua didn't hesitate to change direction, and desperately fled out of the sobbing Meng mountain range. At this time, Xiaohua already couldn't care about concealing himself, couldn't care about elegance, only wanted to escape from this sobbing Meng Mountains, only wanted to escape from this incomparably powerful goshawk's sharp claws. Unfortunately, even if Xiaohua's current flying speed is comparable to that of a peak qi refining cultivator, the two spirit beasts behind him are also extraordinary. The earthy yellow shadow in the front has the appearance of a small mouse. The most ridiculous thing is that on the back of that small mouse, there is an even smaller mouse cub. That mouse cub's eyes haven't even opened, and its body doesn't have many fine hairs. Only a small tail is entangled with the mouse's tail. Although this mouse was still dragging its baby, its speed was still much faster than Xiaohua's. It was like a flying yellow line rapidly extending across the emerald green canopy. That goshawk is even more powerful. With a few flaps of its wings, it caught up with the mouse. Its sharp claws are everywhere on the mouse's back. The mouse's fleeing speed isn't fast enough, but it dodges extremely fast. Every time it is caught by the sharp claws, it will be dodged, and countless trees under the mouse's body will be torn apart by the goshawk's sharp claws. Xiaohua desperately fled in front, but in just a few breaths of time, that mouse and goshawk caught up with him. Two ice-cold divine senses swept over Xiaohua's body, causing Xiaohua's heart to die like ashes. Is there a mistake? Both of them have the strength of a foundation establishment cultivator, Xiaohua secretly criticized. You guys fight, there's no need to bring disaster to mortals. Thinking this, Xiaohua clenched his teeth, turned around, and immediately flew in another direction. Moreover, he flew higher and higher. He knew that this goshawk was chasing after the mouse. As long as the mouse doesn't catch up to him, he will have a chance to survive. Things don't go as he wishes. Xiaohua had just flown away when that mouse that had been fleeing on the treetop suddenly flew into the air. Like a perfectly straight yellow line, it shot toward Xiaohua's back. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. With a wave of his hand, a stack of yellow talismans was thrown towards the mouse as if they were free of charge. With a rumbling sound, a dozen or so fireballs exploded behind him. But in the midst of the exploding fireballs, that mouse unexpectedly flew onto Xiaohua's back unscathed. How could Xiaohua dare to let it get on his back? The tip of the devil's spear in his hand thrust forward. That mouse only slightly turned and dodged the tip of the spear, steadily landing on Xiaohua's back. By the time the mouse grasped the Taoist robe on Xiaohua's back, that mouse's expression was dispirited, as if its vitality had been greatly damaged. It wanted to rely on Xiaohua to throw off the goshawk on its back. Xiaohua hurriedly grabbed with his back hand, but even though the mouse's eyes were slightly narrowed, its divine sense was still there. No matter how Xiaohua stretched out his hand, he simply couldn't grab even half a strand of mouse hair. Why am I so unlucky? Without waiting for Xiaohua to complain in exasperation, a black shadow descended from the sky. A 3-zhang wide wing blocked Xiaohua's head, and in the fierce sound of the wind, the goshawk's sharp claws grabbed at the mouse on Xiaohua's back. Xiaohua's heart was greatly shaken. Needless to say, this mouse would definitely be able to dodge this claw, and the goshawk's claws would most likely land on his body. Therefore, he was no longer able to throw off the mouse. He once again clenched his teeth, and the true qi in his entire body rapidly revolved. Urging his magic power, he quickly flew in another direction with incomparable speed. At this time, there was already no other thought in his mind. He only wanted to fly even faster, to escape the goshawk's sharp claws. However, he had only flown for a few breaths of time before another sharp gust of wind attacked his back from above. That goshawk's sharp claws fell again. Xiaohua sighed in his heart. He fiercely took out the tip of the devil's spear from his space, and with a turn of his hand he wanted to stab it into the goshawk's claw. With a clang, it seemed like two sharp objects had collided. Some sparks burst out from between the tip of the spear and the goshawk's claw, but there wasn't any damage on the goshawk's claw. Good heavens! Is this still a goshawk's claw? I'm afraid that even metal and stone aren't this sturdy. Xiaohua's heart trembled again. However, the strength of Xiaohua's stab was extremely great. Although the goshawk's wind was also strong, it was still struck back a few steps. Its two huge wings fiercely flapped, and it stabilized itself. A resounding eagle cry rang out. That goshawk was infuriated by Xiaohua's counterattack. Going berserk, its wings flapped, and its two eagle claws rapidly clawed at two places on Xiaohua's back. Xiaohua saw that the tip of the devil spear was able to block the goshawk's sharp claws. His heart was a bit shaken, and at the same time, he lowered his head and flew rapidly. At the same time, he circulated the nameless chant, and all his attention was focused on the movements behind him. Seeing the goshawk's claw coming down, he immediately blocked the tip of the devil spear behind him just like before. With another clang, Xiaohua blocked one of the goshawk's claws, but in the instant he blocked it, the other goshawk's claw came from another direction. This claw was like lightning. The iron cloak talisman and weak water talisman on Xiaohua's body were like paper under this sharp claw. In an instant, it pierced into his Taoist robe. At this crucial moment, the muscles on Xiaohua's body suddenly trembled. His entire body suddenly hugged into a ball, and Xiaohua seemed to be on flat ground. With an extremely ingenious movement technique, he actually dodged the goshawk's sharp claws. The pleasant surprise didn't stop there. At the same time that Xiaohua used his movement technique, his other hand very naturally took out the devil spear from the space. He slightly unfolded it in the air, and like using an iron rod, he swatted it at the goshawk's sharp claws from an extremely strange angle. Pa! The goshawk's sharp claws did its best to dodge, but under Xiaohua's ingenious angle and excellent timing, it still couldn't dodge and was hit by the devil spear. Caw, caw, caw! The goshawk's sharp claws fiercely retracted. It raised its beak to the sky and cried out several times. Immediately, its 3-meter-long wings fiercely flapped, and a hurricane-like force directly attacked Xiaohua. That hurricane hadn't yet come close, but a suffocating feeling hit Xiaohua in the face. Xiaohua turned pale with fright. This wasn't a simple force, but a hurricane formed from spiritual aura. This was the furious attack of a Foundation establishment goshawk. How could a trifling aura-refining cultivator like him withstand it? Not daring to hesitate, Xiaohua immediately changed direction. Head down, he flew straight to the ground. Moreover, at the same time he flew down, Xiaohua immediately used an Earth Escape talisman on his body. This was also the flash of inspiration he had just now. Sure enough, the goshawk was caught off guard by Xiaohua's sudden descent. In an instant it rushed far away. By the time the goshawk landed again, Xiaohua had already fallen a lot. The goshawk had been teased time and time again. This time, it was thoroughly angry. With a flap of its giant wings, a black shadow of 10 feet in size swooped down from the sky towards Xiaohua's back. Its sharp claws actually emitted a cold light under the sunlight. If Xiaohua was caught by these claws, he would most likely end up with his flesh and blood flying everywhere. Quick, quick, quick! Xiaohua almost wanted to reach out a hand in his heart, wanting to quickly land on the ground. Unfortunately, the goshawk's sharp claws attacked when he was about 100 feet above the ground. Xiaohua didn't even think. His entire body flew at an extremely beautiful angle in midair. The devil spear in his hand was similarly incomparably gorgeous, and in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, it blocked between his back and the goshawk's claws. The strange thing was that this devil spear wasn't the same as before. In this attack, there wasn't any strength. Instead, at the same time it collided with the goshawk's claws, it used a kind of ingenious method to borrow the enormous force of the goshawk's claws to rapidly push Xiaohua's own body towards the ground. Xiaohua only needed a breath to cover the distance of 100 feet. Just as his body landed on the ground, a burst of brilliance flashed on Xiaohua's body. The Earth Escape talisman came into effect. Xiaohua's body suddenly disappeared under the ground. The goshawk saw that it had been teased time and time again. Its prey, an extremely weak thing, had actually disappeared in front of its eyes. It was abnormally furious. Its body flew on the ground, and its divine sense ruthlessly swept over Xiaohua's body, who was deep underground. Xiaohua was underground and had already sensed the goshawk's divine sense. Greatly alarmed, he hurriedly fled to other places. Unfortunately, when he fled 100 feet, the goshawk also flew 100 feet. The goshawk's body had always been above Xiaohua's head. Chapter 1405. Xiao Hua's Earth Escape Talisman had a time limit. Not long after, he saw his body flashing with light. Xiao Hua hurriedly put another Earth Escape Talisman on his body and fled to another place. After so many times, the Earth Escape Talismans in Xiao Hua's space had been exhausted. Xiao Hua looked at the pitch-black sky in panic, not knowing what to do. Although he couldn't see the goshawk on the ground, the goshawk's divine sense had never left his side. He had already fled for a long time, but the divine sense was like a maggot in his bones. He couldn't escape. What should I do? Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the last Earth Escape Talisman. After using this Earth Escape Talisman, he could only be obediently squeezed out of the ground, exposing himself to the goshawk's sharp claws and huge wings. Facing a Foundation establishment goshawk, Xiao Hua was like a defenseless baby. At this moment, a squeaking sound was heard. The rat that had been lying on his back all this time flew up and floated in front of him out of thin air. "Oh, I forgot to escape. This mouse is the real prey that the goshawk is chasing. I'm just a fish in the pond." Xiao Hua saw the mouse and suddenly realized. At this moment, the mouse seemed to have recovered a bit of its vitality. Its eyes were wide open, and it stared at Xiao Hua from top to bottom. "AI, big brother," Xiao Hua said. "I don't know where you came from, but you should escape. Why are you pulling me? Even if I cultivate for 10 years, I'm afraid I won't be a match for that goshawk. If big brother has good intentions, you should leave quickly. While I can still hide for a while, let me live." Saying this, Xiao Hua put his hands together and saluted the mouse. Mouse also didn't know if he could understand, but after a moment, he also held his 2 mouse paws in front of his chest, and couldn't help but smile as he saluted Xiao Hua. Seeing this, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and muttered, "Big brother, don't laugh at this little Taoist. You leaving quickly is already a grace to this little Taoist." While speaking, the light around Xiao Hua's body flickered. Xiao Hua knew that the Earth Escape Talisman was about to lose its effect, so he quickly used the last Earth Escape Talisman on himself. Right at this moment, the rat's tail moved slightly, and it actually brought the little rat on its back that hadn't opened its eyes to his eyes. The amazing thing was that the little rat actually floated in midair, and didn't seem to fall. The rat stared at the rat cub in front of it for a long time. There was an indescribable meaning in its tiny eyes. Xiao Hua did not understand it at first, but when his gaze met the rat's, he felt as if his heart had been struck by a giant hammer. In the rat's eyes there was a kind of pity, a kind of reluctance, a kind of determination, and an unparalleled love. Xiao Hua watched in disbelief. He didn't dare to believe that he was actually able to see such a scene through his narrow vision. His eyes had long since become moist. At this moment he also understood the rat's intentions. He just stood there quietly, waiting for the rat's decision. Sure enough, in just a moment, the rat suddenly retracted its gaze. An ice-cold divine sense swept over Xiao Hua's body. The rat's mouth was still making jiji sounds, saying a language that Xiao Hua didn't understand. Xiao Hua's face was heavy. He also looked straight at it, seemingly not retreating. Soon after, the rat shook its tail, separating it from the rat cub's tail. Then, with a tap of its tail, the rat cub floated towards Xiao Hua. However, just as it floated a few inches, the rat's tail curled up and suddenly pulled the rat cub back. The rat's tail coiled around the rat cub, and a doting feeling filled the entire space. Sigh, Xiao Hua sighed inwardly. He also couldn't bear it in his heart. Soon after, the rat pushed the rat cub. Without waiting for the rat cub to float in front of Xiao Hua, the rat's figure flashed, and it actually easily escaped from the halo of Xiao Hua's Earth Escape Talisman. And just as the rat left the ground and disappeared from Xiao Hua's sight, Xiao Hua clearly saw that the rat suddenly turned its head, and its eyes lovingly looked at the rat cub in midair. Xiao Hua didn't know the situation above the ground. He only knew that just as the rat left the ground, the goshawk's ice-cold divine sense immediately disappeared from his body. When the divine sense disappeared, the rat cub floated in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. This was an extremely cute little thing. Its eyes hadn't opened yet, and its red body was covered in fine fur. Its small tail unconsciously moved, as if it was looking for its mother's warmth. Sigh, Xiao Hua. How could he bear to ignore this rat cub? He gently extended his hands to hold it. The weightless rat cub was slightly warm as it leaned against Xiaohua's palm. Its small tail had just touched Xiaohua's finger when it instinctively curled up, tightly curling around Xiaohua's little finger. A kind of indescribable warmth flowed in Xiaohua's heart. Immediately after, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly escaped underground, and quickly fled in a direction. When the Earth Escape Talisman was about to lose its effect, he rushed out of the ground. Sure enough, on the ground, there were no traces of the goshawk and rat. When Xiaohua saw this, he knew that he had escaped with his life. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He looked at the pink lump of meat in his palm, and the corner of his mouth curled up. His palm slightly curled up, and he was about to put it into his spirit storage pouch. However, the rat cub's small tail was tightly wrapped around Xiaohua's little finger, and it didn't loosen. Xiaohua was unable to put it in. What should I do? I can't always hold it in my hand, right? Xiaohua was somewhat depressed. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he thought of the Ice Worm King's egg and water-patterned butterfly's egg in the space. He brushed his hand, and tried to send the rat cub into the space. Strangely enough, the rat cub's body actually smoothly entered the space, but its small tail was still wrapped around Xiaohua's finger. However, when the light from reverse light shone on the rat cub's body, the rat cub immediately floated comfortably in the space, and its small tail also loosened from Xiaohua's finger. Hee, this place is safe. I'll let this little guy slowly grow up. In any case, I won't let down the rat mother who generously went to her death. Xiaohua laughed and raised his eyes to discern the direction. He urged his magic power, and his entire figure didn't fly high. Following the treetops, he flew out of the sobbing Meng mountain range at extreme speed. At the foot of the mountain, Wuxia had long been running in circles. However, she didn't dare to fly back to the sobbing Meng mountain range. When she saw Xiaohua's figure flying over, her eyes held an indescribable astonishment and peace of mind. Fellow Taoist Wuxia couldn't wait to welcome him, and impatiently asked, Pailon, the twin bears, and Yin Shenwei, how are they? Xiaohua's eyes slightly narrowed, and he landed on the foot of the mountain. He laughed. What does fellow Taoist Kai think? Wuxia's face revealed joy, and she laughed. Fellow Taoist Xiao can return. Then they not waiting for Wuxia to finish speaking, Xiaohua waved his hand and said, How can I be a match for the three seniors? I only watched the three of them fight from afar. As for what happened to them, I also didn't dare to show my face. I only shot them a glance, and then hurriedly fled. If they perished together, that's also possible. Wuxia's eyes turned, and she hurriedly nodded and said, That's right. I also had the same thought. Moreover, just now the sobbing Meng mountain range let out a great cry of the firmament shaking. Maybe, it's also normal for them to be killed by the firmament shaking. Firmament shaking? Xiaohua's brows furrowed, and he inwardly said, In all likelihood, that goshawk is the firmament shaking. Just by hearing this name, I can tell it's not a master that's easy to worry about. Thus he laughed. Isn't that right, fellow Taoist Kai? What rank is this firmament shaking? When I heard that hawk cry, I trembled with fear. I couldn't even fly. The firmament shaking is a third-rank spirit beast, and its strength is comparable to a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator like me. Not to mention us, even a seventh-stage chi condensation cultivator like Yin Shenwei wouldn't be lucky enough to encounter it. Wuxia chuckled. However, since the firmament shaking has appeared here, fellow Taoist Xiao can forget about the spirit-seeking mouse. Why is that? Xiaohua asked. Spirit-seeking mice are different from ordinary spirit beasts. They have strength ranging from the initial to the third rank, and even the fourth rank. The initial rank is naturally equivalent to a first-level chi refining cultivator, and the fourth rank is equivalent to a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. I was still thinking that if fellow Taoist Zhao's luck is good, you can encounter a low-rank spirit-seeking mouse. Moreover, fellow Taoist Zhao's flying speed is very fast, so your chances of catching a low-rank spirit-seeking mouse are also much higher. Wuxia pursed her lips and said regretfully, Unfortunately, the firmament shaking is the natural enemy of spirit-seeking mice. No matter what rank the spirit-seeking mouse is, when it sees the firmament shaking, all of its bones and tendons will go limp, and it won't be able to escape even half a step. Today, the firmament shaking has appeared, and I'm afraid we won't be able to see any more spirit-seeking mice in the surroundings. No matter. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, our goal isn't the spirit-seeking mouse. As long as we can find the mother-child spirit fruit, it's fine. Of course, Wuxia clapped her hands and said, then let's go now. How could Xiaohua go now? He shook his head and said, the firmament shaking has just appeared, and the Sobmon mountain range is still very dangerous. Let's wait a few more days. And I's a bit impatient, Wuxia echoed. Soon after, Xiaohua and Xiaohua each found a place to rest in the mountains. After 3 days, they quietly arrived at the stone wall where the mother-child spirit fruit was located. The corpses of Yan Liwei and the Blue Bear duo had long since disappeared. Only their blood-stained Taoist robes and the storage pouches were left behind. Presumably, the corpses had already been eaten by the wild beasts in the mountains. Seeing that Xiaohua was extremely familiar with the location of the 3 corpses, Wuxia wasn't surprised in the slightest. During these 3 days, she also understood that the higher Xiaohua's cultivation was, the more beneficial it was to her. Therefore, when Xiaohua held the 3 storage pouches in his hand, Wuxia didn't wait for him to speak and said with a smile, fellow Taoist, Zhao's luck is indeed good. This storage pouch should be a gift from the heavens to fellow Taoist. How come I didn't see it? It seems like I really have no fate with the things inside the storage pouch. Xiaohua stared blankly for a moment, then immediately understood. He no longer held back and hung the 3 storage pouches on his waist. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please follow I. Wuxia waited for Xiaohua to finish packing, then led Xiaohua to the place where the stream of water flowed on the stone wall. She used her hand to point at the stream and said, this is the passage that leads to the place where the mother-child spirit fruit grows. We only need to use magic power to break the stone walls on both sides of the stream, and we'll be able to see it. Chapter 1406. Xiaohua had long known about the mystery of the stone wall. Since Wuxia didn't covet the storage bags of Yan Yanwei and the blue bears, Xiaohua absolutely wouldn't take advantage of Wuxia. So he smiled and said, it's all thanks to fellow Kai's guidance. If it was me, I wouldn't have been able to see that the water flow on the stone wall was actually the entrance. Wuxia pursed her lips and smiled. She walked in front of the water flow, looked left and right, then patted her storage bag and took out several strange yellow talismans. She activated her magic power, turning them into various colors of brilliance. With the wave of Wuxia's slender hands, they hit various parts of the stone wall. Formation talismans? Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. He saw Yan Yanwei use this thing before, and Wuxia also didn't explain much. Now that he saw Wuxia take it out, she must have prepared it during the half-year he was in seclusion. Soon after, Wuxia activated her magic power. Her hands formed simple seals, and hit the formation talismans on the stone wall. Following the seals, the stone wall gradually overflowed with a faint brilliance. Xiaohua took a few glances and saw that the seals were very simple, so he lost interest. Soon after, he reached out and opened the storage bag at his waist, rummaging through the things inside. There were many things in Yan Yanwei's storage bag. There were some formation talismans, many yellow talismans, and several alchemy books. What made Xiaohua the most happy was that there were many marrow cleansing pills and clear pleasure pills, and even some Giji pills. These Giji pills were the same as the clear pleasure pills. They were also pills that could increase magic power. Xiaohua only learned about them after studying alchemy for this half-year, and they were also the pills he prepared to choose after taking the clear pleasure pill. Now that he saw them, of course he was wild with joy. Moreover, this Yan Yanwei was indeed the direct bloodline of Xuanyan School's alchemists. Not only were there many marrow cleansing pills, there were also many clear pleasure pills that exceeded Xiaohua's expectations. In contrast, there weren't many good things in the storage bags of the blue bears, only some ordinary pills. Not to mention any cultivation methods, even the yellow talismans were missing. This really made Xiaohua somewhat disdainful. What's wrong with these people? They don't even bring their own cultivation methods with them, and still hide them. Is it so important? As she thought of this, she looked down on them and quietly put these things into her space, so that no one would be able to find them. Fortunately, the quality of these 3 people's storage pouches was not bad. They could be exchanged for some high-grade spirit stones. Xiaohua put them in his sleeve and accepted them with a smile. While Xiao Huaqing was counting the medicinal pills, Wuxia was also nearing the end. Wuxia shouted. Quick, her face flushed red. She formed a seal with both hands and raised it in front of her chest with great difficulty. Then, she slowly pushed it forward as if she was lifting a 1,000-kilogram boulder. After casting the seal with great difficulty, Wuxia's body trembled slightly. Sweat immediately seeped out of her face. This was the sign of overdraft of her supernatural power. Following Wuxia's final seal, a brilliant brilliance appeared on the stone wall. It was extremely dazzling. However, just as Xiaohua squinted his eyes and stared at it, that brilliance flashed and the stone wall returned to its original appearance. This Xiaohua stared blankly, turning his head to look at Wuxia. The redness on Wuxia's face disappeared, revealing a pale white. Alas! Wuxia sighed and shook her head slightly. After a long while, she said in a low voice, My supernatural power is still insufficient. This stone wall. I'm afraid it can't be broken. Soon after, as if explaining, she said embarrassedly, I found Yin Yanwei because he's a 7th level qi refining cultivator. His supernatural power is much stronger than I. That's why Xiaohua nodded and didn't say anything. Thinking for a moment, he walked to the front of the stone wall and looked at the place where Wuxia had just inserted the formation talisman. Then he jumped into the stream of water on the stone wall, took a good stand, and placed his hand on the side of the stone wall. Taking a deep breath, he circulated all the strength in his body and moved the stone wall to the outside. Xiaohua's strength wasn't just for show. Following Xiaohua's exertion of strength, that stone wall's brilliance began to flash. Moreover, it became increasingly resplendent, almost exactly the same as when Wuxia used the formation talisman just a moment ago. Ah? Wuxia stood beside the stream of water, her face full of astonishment. She really didn't think that when a cultivator's strength reached a certain degree, they could actually break through magic with force. But the matter still wasn't as simple as Xiaohua thought. Just as the stone wall faintly swayed, his fingertips suddenly slipped. It seemed like the restriction on the stone wall had some effect. Xiaohua's figure immediately lost balance and fell into the stream of water. Wuxia was startled. Just as she raised her hand and wanted to do something, Xiaohua's figure that fell in midair suddenly spun strangely. He didn't use any magic power at all, and steadily fell into the stream of water. Okay, Wuxia didn't know why, but she suddenly cried out. Xiaohua scratched his head, looked at Wuxia with an embarrassed smile, and went forward to try again. In the end, that stone wall's restriction was still as smooth as before. Xiaohua was the same as before. Unable to move the stone wall away, Xiaohua slightly frowned. Thinking for a moment, he took out the devil spear tip. Just as he wanted to use the spear tip to break the restriction, he was stopped by Wuxia. Fellow Taoist Xiao, wait a moment. What's wrong? Fellow Taoist Kai? Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. Wuxia shook her head and said, This restriction is somewhat strange. In the information that I received, the restriction on this stone wall must be completely broken at the same time. Only then can the passage be completely opened. Otherwise, the restriction will have a backup plan that will destroy the mother-child spirit fruit in the passage. Just now, fellow Taoist Xiao used force to break the restriction. You should be able to move the entire stone wall away, and the backup plan of the restriction won't be triggered. If you use this spear tip to break the formation, I'm afraid there will be a bad result. Ah, there's such a wonderful formation? Hearing this, Xiaohua hurriedly put away the devil spear tip. Then what should we do? Xiaohua didn't have any other methods besides using force to break the restriction. I also have no other way. Wuxia slightly shook her head. Unless we find another person whose magic power is even higher than I's. Although that's what she said, and in the cultivation world of the country of Xi, there were many cultivators with higher cultivation than Wuxia, but how many of them could Wuxia and Xiaohua trust? How about, fellow Taoist Xiao, wait a moment, I will go and invite my sister over? She's a 7th level qi refining cultivator. She should be able to break the restriction. Wuxia's eyes lit up. Fairy Hongxia? Xiaohua heard Wuxia mention her before, so he said with a smile, of course it's possible. But Wuxia slightly bit her pearly white teeth and said hesitantly, when I came out, my sister was in closed-door cultivation. I'm afraid she still hasn't come out yet. Isn't that the same as not saying anything? Xiaohua rolled his eyes and muttered in his stomach. The two of them pondered for half a day, but they still couldn't think of any good method, so they had no choice but to leave the sobbing Meng Mountains. After flying for a while, Xiaohua's eyes suddenly lit up. He had a plan in his heart, so he cupped his hands and said, fellow Taoist Kai, how about this? Since we don't have any effective methods for the time being, we'll cultivate here first. If fellow Taoists can make a breakthrough, wouldn't we be able to open the passage? Wuxia bitterly smiled. She had just taken a foundation establishment pill, so it was easy for her to make a breakthrough. Even if she took another pill now, it was impossible for her magic power to increase by too much. The restriction on the stone wall still couldn't be broken. But, apart from this, what other methods did she have? After all, being able to pick the mother-child spirit fruit and refine the embryonic breathing pill was her only hope at this moment. All right, we can only do this. Wuxia slightly nodded. At this moment, she could be considered as being forced to do something beyond her ability. The two of them found a secluded place, and each of them found a clean cave, and started to cultivate. Before Xiaohua entered the cave, he also asked for a copy of the method to use the array talisman to break the restriction on the stone wall. Wuxia wasn't stingy and gave it to him. In a flash, several months passed. Wuxia's cultivation was still at the same place, without any improvement. Xiaohua's cultivation, with the support of the clear breeze pill and marrow cleansing pill, directly reached the peak of the 3rd level of the qi refining realm. But, just as Xiaohua was about to take the last marrow cleansing pill and clear breeze pill to break through the bottleneck of the 3rd level of the qi refining realm and enter the 4th level, Wuxia didn't want to. Seeing Wuxia's summoning talisman, Xiaohua could only get up from his closed-door cultivation and very helplessly push away the huge rock blocking the entrance of the cave. Fellow Taoist Xiao, outside the cave, Wuxia was very apologetic. Just as she cupped her hands and was about to apologize, her eyes lit up again. She smiled almost jealously and said, congratulations, congratulations. I didn't expect that in a mere few months, fellow Taoist, your cultivation would advance again. You've already reached the peak of the 3rd level of the qi refining realm immediately. Wuxia came to her senses and slapped her forehead. I was too impatient. Alas, if it wasn't for I sending you a message, I'm afraid that fellow Taoists would have been able to enter the 4th level of the qi refining realm in a little more than a month, right? Atonement, atonement. Xiaohua smiled and said, look at what fellow Taoist Kai is saying. Fellow Taoists cultivated to the 3rd level of the qi refining realm many years ago. I only reached the 3rd level of the qi refining realm at such an age. What's there to be proud of? Wuxia slightly shook her head. She was very clear in her heart that from the 2nd level of the qi refining realm to the 3rd level of the qi refining realm, and then from the 3rd level of the qi refining realm to the 4th level of the qi refining realm, she spent a lot of time. As for Xiaohua, from the 1st level of the qi refining realm she saw until now, he was at the peak of the 3rd level of the qi refining realm. How much time did he spend? Comparisons are odious. This was the only thought in Wuxia's mind. Fellow Taoist Kai, I haven't made any progress in these past few months. Counting with my fingers, it should be about time for my younger sister to come out of closed-door cultivation. We can't just stay here forever. If possible, I want to take a trip back to Luoyang and see if I can call my younger sister over. Xiaohua smiled and said, fellow Taoist Kai's idea is indeed wonderful. However, before fellow Taoist Kai leaves, I also want to give it a try and see if I can break the restriction on that stone wall. Wuxia was overjoyed. She clapped her hands and said, "Could it be that fellow Taoist Zhao's strength has increased again in these past few months?" Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. Soon after, the two of them tidied up and once again arrived in front of the stone wall. The flowing water in front of the stone wall was still gurgling, as if it hadn't changed at all due to the passage of time. Chapter 1407. Xiaohua walked in front of the stone wall and carefully examined it. Then he extended his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Kai, I'll have to trouble you to lend me the talisman." "What? Talisman? Kai Wuxia was originally looking forward to seeing Xiaohua's divine power, but she didn't expect Xiaohua to actually ask her for talisman. She stuttered for a moment. "Yes, talisman. I want to give it a try," Xiaohua said as expected. How Kai Wuxia originally wanted to say, "How is that possible?" But when the words reached her mouth, she hurriedly stopped. Then, she thought for a moment, patted her storage bag, took out several talismans, and handed them to Xiaohua. Xiaohua had already asked Kai Wuxia how to use talismans before entering closed-door cultivation. Moreover, the technique wasn't very complicated. To be honest, Xiaohua had already practiced it skillfully a few days before he entered closed-door cultivation. Therefore, Xiaohua took the talismans and didn't answer. He walked in front of the stone wall in a flash. Just like how Kai Wuxia controlled the talismans several months ago, he calmly inserted the talismans into the stone wall one by one. Then he also urged his magic power, formed a technique, and inserted the talismans into the stone wall one by one. Seeing the stone wall gradually flash with brilliance, Kai Wuxia was completely dumbfounded. No matter if it was the technique Xiaohua used to insert the talismans into the stone wall, or the technique he used to activate the technique, they were all extremely nimble. It was as if he had immersed himself in it for dozens of years. It was far from what she could compare to, and the resplendent brilliance on the stone wall, as well as the magic power displayed by Xiaohua, also made Kai Wuxia astonished. He's only at the peak of the third level of the Qi refining realm. His magic power, how can it be stronger than mine? Kai Wuxia's mind turned rapidly, and the expression on her face was also uncertain. I'm at the peak of the fifth level of the Qi refining realm. I'm about to break through to the sixth level of the Qi refining realm. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The stone wall moved and made a series of rumbling sounds. In addition, there was the sound of water splashing. Xiaohua actually used his own magic power to use a formation talisman to completely break the restriction on the stone wall. After the stone wall moved away, it revealed a stone cave that was about 10 feet in size. Xiaohua bitterly smiled as he looked at the green and slippery moss all around the cave, and the stream that occasionally flowed out. Ever since he came out of the 1,000-foot Peaks cave, he still had some lingering fear towards this cave. He didn't dare to rashly try it out. Fellow Taoist Xiao Kai Wuxia couldn't help but ask with a stutter. Your magic power. How is it so deep? That's right, not only is his divine power astonishing, even his magic power is more profound than a cultivator at the peak of the fifth layer of Qi refining. How can you let him live? Xiaohua looked at the pitch-black cave and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Kai, are there any restrictions in this cave?" Seeing that Xiaohua didn't answer, Kai Wuxia's face turned red. Thinking about it, this was his secret. If she asked for no reason, he definitely wouldn't answer. Kai Wuxia calmed her mind and said with a smile, "Don't worry, fellow Taoist Xiao. This passage was used by the senior, who discovered the mother-child spirit fruit. He only placed a restriction on the stone walls, but there is no restriction inside." Oh, Xiaohua nodded slightly and turned his head to ask, "Then, I'll lead the way in front. What do you think, fellow Taoist Kai?" Kai Wuxia was a bit hesitant. Xiaohua leading the way in front would certainly reduce her danger by a lot, but on the other hand, Xiaohua could see the mother-child spirit fruit first. Wouldn't she lose the initiative? Just as Kai Wuxia was hesitating, she inadvertently saw Xiaohua's thought-provoking gaze. Kai Wuxia's heart immediately trembled. The current Xiaohua was no longer the little cultivator at the first layer of qi refining she met before the new year. Since Xiaohua could kill the blue twin bears, and also have the severe might of a 7th layer qi refining cultivator, then she was definitely not Xiaohua's opponent. Since he was leading the way, he obviously had the intention of letting her take advantage of him. Why should she think so much? Thinking of this, Kai Wuxiao immediately cupped her hands and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, please go first." Xiaohua nodded, then clapped his hands and took out the demonic spear shaft from his storage pouch. Taking advantage of the situation, he made a staff flower-like move in his hand. Urging his magic power, he flew into the cave. Kai Wuxia's gaze was very complicated as she looked at Xiaohua's back. In her mind, Xiaohua's confidence and the very strange staff in his hand flashed. Sighing, she took out a moonstone from her storage pouch and also followed him. Ever since Xiaohua used a strange move to fight Firmament Shocker in the Qiming Mountain range several months ago, Xiaohua thought about his very strange staff technique for a long time. When he was in closed-door cultivation and cultivating his cultivation method, he also took out the demonic spear shaft and familiarized himself with it. Although he didn't have a clear memory in his mind, when he fumbled with his hands, he actually remembered the 360 moves of the staff technique. And at the same time that he recalled the staff technique, the name of the staff technique, Heavenly Staff Technique, also appeared in Xiaohua's mind. What an arrogant name. This was Xiaohua's only thought at that time. In the following few months, Xiaohua often practiced this Heavenly Staff Technique. Therefore, when he took out the demonic spear shaft just now, he very naturally made a staff flower-like move with the demonic spear shaft. Xiaohua flew in front, holding the demonic spear shaft in one hand and the moonstone in the other. The cave was pitch black and also very long. Xiaohua and Kai Wuxia flew for a cup of tea's worth of time before they saw light. When Xiaohua and Kai Wuxia flew out of the mountain path, they discovered that this was a space of several hundred feet in size. This space was surrounded by towering stone walls, and above them were verdant vines that tightly covered this space. Moreover, those vines were abruptly hanging high in the sky. If there wasn't a strange restriction, Xiaohua wouldn't believe it no matter what. Xiaohua first sized up the surroundings, then flew into the space and landed on the ground. Kai Wuxia flew in after him, but before she could land, it was as if she was struck by lightning. Her gaze was lifeless as she looked at a spirit fruit that was taller than a person not far in front of her. That spirit fruit stem was as thick as a fist, and at the top was a gourd-like object. However, this object was flat, more like half a gourd. Moreover, that gourd-like protrusion was raised high up, facing the light between the vines in the sky. Mother-child spirit fruit, Kai Wuxia murmured. It's really the mother-child spirit fruit. This is the mother-child spirit fruit? Xiaohua was a bit baffled. He thought that the mother-child spirit fruit was two spirit fruits that were born together, one big and one small. He didn't expect that this spirit fruit that was like half a gourd was actually the mother-child spirit fruit. Fellow Taoist Xiao, take a look. That mother-child spirit fruit is thin on the top and thick on the bottom. Isn't it the appearance of a pregnant baby? That's why it's called the mother-child spirit fruit. Kai Wuxia's gaze was somewhat infatuated as she explained in a low voice. Oh, so it's like that. Xiaohua understood. At the same time, he also thought to himself, embryonic breathing pill. Is it also related to this pregnant baby? Fellow Taoist Xiao, this mother-child spirit fruit, how are you and I going to split it? Kai Wuxia came back to her senses and asked somewhat hesitantly. Fellow Taoist Kai, there are still many mother-child spirit fruits in this space. I'm afraid it's enough for us to pick. Xiaohua used his finger to point and said with a smile. Kai Wuxia smiled bitterly and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao probably still doesn't understand the characteristics of this mother-child spirit fruit. Although there are many mother-child spirit fruits in this space, but only one stalk is the true mother-child spirit fruit. Without waiting for this stalk of mother-child spirit fruit to be picked, all the other mother-child spirit fruits won't truly mature. Isn't that simple? Pick the mature one. Wait for the next one to mature, then we'll just pick it. Xiaohua very naturally thought. There is a gap of 10 years between two mature mother-child spirit fruits. Wuxia said calmly. Ah, so it's like that. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth curled, and he said in astonishment. Then, how are these mother-child spirit fruits grown? It's said that if a mature mother-child spirit fruit isn't refined into embryonic breathing pill, then its fruit will contain the seeds of the mother-child spirit fruit. When the fruit is fully ripe, the entire fruit will burst open, and the seeds will also scatter in all directions, growing into a new mother-child spirit fruit. Wuxia explained very detailedly. Then, is this stalk mature? Xiaohua pointed at the mother-child spirit fruit in front of him and asked. Wuxia shook her head. No, that mature mother-child spirit fruit's fruit will have light gold stripes on it. This fruit is still light green, so it definitely isn't. Xiaohua's eyes turned and he said with a smile. Since it's like that, you and I will split it 60-40. You and I will split up to search, and whoever finds it will get 60% of the embryonic breathing pill. Really? Wuxia said with joy at the unexpected turn of events. Of course, go ahead. I always keep my word, Xiaohua said with a grin. Good. Wuxia was overjoyed, and she followed the direction that Xiaohua pointed to search. Xiaohua waited for Wuxia to walk far away, and with a wave of his hand, he took out the puppet from the space. He cast a spell, and the puppet automatically dug out all the mother-child spirit fruits from the ground. Xiaohua himself also walked slowly. Every time he walked in front of a mother-child spirit fruit, he would patiently cast a spell, transplanting these mother-child spirit fruits into his space one by one. Just when Xiaohua and the puppet transplanted the 20th mother-child spirit fruit into the space, Wuxia's exclamation suddenly came from afar. Xiaohua didn't dare to neglect, and he stored the puppet into the space. His figure flew up, and he flew towards the place where Wuxia exclaimed. Without waiting for Xiaohua to fly to the place where the sound came from, he saw Wuxia flying back from afar in a panic, and behind her, there was a huge dragonfly chasing after her. That dragonfly was 3 feet long, and its entire body was red. Within the red, there were many leopard patterns. On top of its head, fist-sized eyes were flickering with red light, and its light red wings were flashing extremely quickly. Its flying speed was only slightly slower than Wuxia's leopard dragonfly. Xiaohua was slightly stunned when he saw this. This was a first-grade spirit beast recorded in the insect scripture. Xiaohua obtained the insect scripture from a disciple of the spirit husbandry sect in the southern colored plain. He had never read it carefully, and only took it out to read it after encountering the spirit-seeking mouse. I didn't expect it to be the guardian spirit beast of the mother-child spirit fruit. At this moment, Wuxia also saw Xiaohua, and her face revealed a happy expression. Her figure flew toward Xiaohua. Chapter 1408. At this moment, in Wuxia's heart, Xiaohua was no longer a first-layer aura refining cultivator, nor was he a low-level disciple whom she wanted to repay with some kindness. Instead, he was a mysterious cultivator whose cultivation level was a bit higher than hers, and who also had endless strength. This was a fact that Wuxia was unwilling to admit, but she had no choice but to face. Therefore, when Wuxia saw Xiaohua while being chased by the leopard dragonfly, she immediately wanted to fly towards him. However, when Xiaohua saw this, he slightly frowned, seeing Xiaohua's strange expression. Wuxia was also bewildered, but she immediately realized that although the leopard dragonfly was the guardian spirit beast of the mother-child spirit fruit, it was only a first-rank spirit beast after all. Its strength was only comparable to a 5th-layer aura refining cultivator. Her current cultivation level was also at the peak of the 5th-layer aura refining realm, so she should be able to fight against the leopard dragonfly. If she lured the leopard dragonfly to Xiaohua as soon as she met him, wouldn't she not be of any use in this process of finding the mother-child spirit fruit? Since she couldn't be of any use, what qualifications did she have to obtain more mother-child spirit fruits? After thinking it through, Wuxia's expression turned cold. She clenched her teeth, turned around, and lured the leopard dragonfly to another place. While Wuxia was hesitating, the leopard dragonfly had already caught up. Its wings buzzed and flashed, and its dragonfly tail, which was like a wooden stick, suddenly danced rapidly. Then, the head of the leopard dragonfly suddenly stretched forward, and a sharp, long icicle pierced towards Wuxia's back with lightning speed. Wuxia had just turned around when the icicle pierced towards her. Greatly shocked, Wuxia hurriedly twisted her body and did her best to dodge, but the icicle was too fast. With a flash of brilliance on Wuxia's back, the iron cloak talisman she had previously put on was pierced by the icicle. Moreover, the icicle's momentum wasn't over yet, and it stabbed diagonally into Wuxia's Taoist robe and into her back. Fortunately, Wuxia reacted quickly and dodged, so the icicle didn't pierce her vital points and only stabbed diagonally into her back and shoulder. While Wuxia was in pain, she took out the fireball talisman in her hand and threw it without hesitation. However, something shocking happened. The leopard dragonfly didn't seem to panic as the fireball grew larger and larger. It waved its tail rapidly, and a snow-like spiritual energy flew toward the fireball to cover it. Rumble! The fireball talisman exploded, but it was blocked by the spiritual energy of ice and snow. The leopard dragonfly was not injured in the slightest. However, Wuxia took advantage of this opportunity to escape far away. Xiaohua saw that Wuxia had lured the leopard dragonfly away, and he understood in his heart. With a wave of his hand, he took out the puppet again, and had it continue to dig out the mother-child spirit fruits. Then he concealed himself and directly flew towards where Wuxia had come from. Not long after, Xiaohua's nose smelled a whiff of frankincense. Looking over, there was a dazzling golden object about 10 zhang away. It was a ripe mother-child spirit fruit. When Xiaohua flew closer, he unconsciously narrowed his eyes. This ripe mother-child spirit fruit was different from the unripe ones he had seen before. This mother-child spirit fruit no longer looked like a gourd from its outer appearance. The top of the gourd had already shrunk a lot and gradually condensed into a sphere, similar to the shape of a human head. The bottom of the gourd was even larger, like the belly of a full month pregnant. At this time, the entire body of the mother-child spirit fruit was entwined with golden fine lines. They looked like runes, but they weren't runes, emitting a faint brilliance. This Xiaohua's brows furrowed even tighter. When he learned that Wuxia had obtained this mother-child spirit fruit from Qing Fengmin's storage pouch, he was somewhat puzzled. This thing was only the main ingredient of the cultivation world's embryonic breathing pill. It had nothing to do with the devil world, so what did Qing Fengmin want it for? Of course, Xiaohua also suspected that Qing Fengmin had obtained it from other cultivators. But looking at this mother-child spirit fruit that looked like a pregnant woman, and then thinking about Qing Fengmin's blood shadow's appearance, Xiaohua felt that there must be some connection. And fortunately, that evil blood shadow has already been destroyed by Li Zongbao. This place, if it was Qing Fengmin's doing, I won't have any more doubts, Xiaohua thought to himself. Then, Xiaohua didn't recklessly pick the mother-child spirit fruit. Instead, he carefully sized up his surroundings. When he felt that there wasn't anything abnormal, he pinched his hand and urged his magic power, wanting to pick the mother-child spirit fruit. But when the magic seal touched the mother-child spirit fruit, the mother-child spirit fruit flashed with brilliance and actually blocked Xiaohua's magic seal to the side. Ouch! Xiaohua was startled in his heart. Not good. Sure enough, just as Xiaohua was startled, a ripple of brilliance appeared at the location of the vines in the air. Immediately after, a ball of slightly jet-black brilliance formed a sphere and struck down at the location of the mother-child spirit fruit. And the leopard dragonfly chasing Wuxia was also alarmed by the abnormal movement in the space. It abandoned Wuxia and turned around to fly back. When Xiaohua saw the jet-black brilliance, his heart calmed down. With a wave of his hand, the demonic spear came out. Then, his figure suddenly flew up, and a move of the heavenly staff technique directly hit that jet-black brilliance. It was also strange. That brilliance seemed to be invisible, but under the demonic spear and under Xiaohua's ingenious staff technique, it actually hit the jet-black brilliance. That brilliance quickly flashed a few times and then disappeared. Roar! In the distance, there was the angry roar of a cheetah. Xiaohua was stunned. How can there be cheetahs in this space? But immediately, Xiaohua understood that this was probably the leopard dragonfly's roar. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't dare to hesitate any longer. He put away the demonic spear and took out the demonic spear tip. Gathering all the strength in his body, he stabbed at the lower part of the mother-child spirit fruit. Gotcha! Like glass shattering, the brilliance was annihilated. The restriction around the mother-child spirit fruit was indeed broken by Xiaohua. At the same time, a large ripple of brilliance above the space was brewing an even greater attack. Xiaohua's expression didn't change. He casually cast a spell and plucked that pale golden mother-child spirit fruit, calmly putting it into his storage bag. As for the stem below the mother-child spirit fruit, it immediately shrank rapidly and soon disappeared. Roar! There was another angry roar of the leopard dragonfly. At this time, it was already within 100 feet. Xiaohua's lips curled into a faint smile. His figure leisurely floated up and flew towards the leopard dragonfly. The leopard dragonfly fiercely flapped its wings. Every time it flashed, a roar would come from its wings. Seeing that Xiaohua was actually coming head-on, the leopard dragonfly stretched out its head and shot out icicles at lightning speed. Why would Xiaohua fight with it? Seeing the icicles flying towards him, he quickly dodged them and flew towards the puppet. In this short period of time, the puppet had dug out more than 10 mother-child spirit fruits. Xiaohua passed by these mother-child spirit fruits, and with a wave of his hand he kept them together with the puppet into the space. Then, with a loud laugh, he flew towards the entrance of the space without consulting anyone. Before he could fly to the entrance, he saw Wuxia flying up with a joyful expression. "Let's go, fellow Taoist Kai." Xiaohua didn't beat around the bush and waved his hand with a smile. "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Xiao." Wuxia laughed softly, and also turned to follow Xiaohua. Roar, roar! The leopard dragonfly behind them kept roaring. Unfortunately, in this several hundred feet space, Xiaohua's flying speed was really too fast. It simply couldn't catch up. When it flew to the entrance of the cave, Xiaohua and Wuxia's figures had already disappeared inside the cave. Looking at the pitch-black cave, the leopard dragonfly didn't dare to go forward. It could only flap its wings and hover up and down. At this time, there was a faint scent of milk in the space, and it immediately disappeared. The leopard dragonfly seemed to have calmed down. It turned around and flew towards a corner of the space. In that corner, a mother-child spirit fruit appeared to have a faint golden color. Several days later, on the foothills of a mountain covered with green cypresses and pine trees, Xiaohua and Wuxia stood on top of a pine tree. Their expressions were relaxed. Wuxia smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, we have been rushing for several days. This place is already far away from the Weiming mountain range. It can be considered safe. We can finally relax." Xiaohua turned his head and looked behind him. He said with some lingering fear, "Of course, I didn't expect that the periphery of the Weiming mountain range also had powerful spirit beasts. They actually flew so fast. If it wasn't for our vigilance and immediately escaping after coming out of the cave, we might really have been buried in the Weiming mountain range." Wuxia's face was also a little panicked. She nodded and said, "The leopard dragonfly inside the cave couldn't be dealt with. Who would have thought that there was actually a firecloud sparrow hiding above the stone wall? If fellow Taoist Zhao's flying speed wasn't fast, I'm afraid I would have already lost my life. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since we have already escaped, those things are already in the past." Xiaohua waved his hand. He clapped his hand and took out a jade box. He handed it over to Wuxia and said, "This is the mother-child spirit fruit. Fellow Taoist Kai, please keep it first." This looking at the mother-child spirit fruit in front of her, Wuxia really didn't dare to believe her eyes. She immediately pushed it back and said, "This mother-child spirit fruit was picked by fellow Taoist Xiao. Moreover, I was very clear about the process. Other than the location of this stone wall being provided by I, everything else was all thanks to fellow Taoist. Moreover, the location of this stone wall was also recorded in the things that fellow Taoist Xiao gave I. Indirectly, it is also fellow Taoist Zhao's." Wuxia pursed her lips and said with a bitter smile, I really didn't contribute anything. How can I take this mother-child spirit fruit? Seeing Xiaohua frown, Wuxia said again. Moreover, this thing, without Yan Liwei's recommendation, we still don't know how to find someone to refine the embryonic breathing pill. Temporarily leaving it with I. I'm afraid it's not safe. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please take it. Let's talk about it again after I think of a way to find someone to refine the pill. So it's like this. Xiaohua thought about it and also agreed. He also didn't hold back and put the mother-child spirit fruit into his space. Soon after, he said, I actually have a way. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.